The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school
What do you guys think?
or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
When you pass a certain threshold, you pay income tax.
In Pennsylvania, Eva Pilgrim has traveled across the state of Pennsylvania as well. You cut your teeth. WPVI in Philadelphia. You've been across the state, and you've seen the same thing Martha has talked about. Neighborhoods where you have Biden signs on one side of the block, Trump signs on the other.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of mixed political support across the state of Pennsylvania. The thing we hear everyone talking about on both sides of the political spectrum is the concern over these ballots. A lot of people were thinking about potentially sending in a mail-in ballot, but then they got concerned because of all the confusion and speculation around the mail-in, so they decided that they would show up in person today to make sure that their vote counted. Making sure their vote counted was incredibly important to almost everyone we spoke to, George.
And Eva, you sent me a note earlier and it was fascinating to me. You said we've heard so much about these shy Trump voters, people who won't tell posters they're going to vote for Donald Trump. You seem to come across what you would consider shy Biden voters in Pennsylvania.
That's exactly right, George. I was actually really surprised to discover this after talking to some neighbors. They would see the Trump signs and they were concerned because they saw Biden signs that had been destroyed or windows that were broken. So they didn't want their neighbors to know that they were going to be voting for Joe Biden. George?
Eva Pilgrim, thanks very much. Coming up on 8 p.m. now, and these polls are going to close in 16 states at 8 p.m. We'll be here with all the results we have when we come back.
Moments from now, we're live in the battleground states as results come in. Polls are already closed in 9 states. They're about to close in the key states of Florida and Pennsylvania when Election Night 2020 continues on ABC.
ABC News, straightforward.
Stand down.
I've been quested to bring this one back to its kind. If I can locate other Mandalorians, they can guide me.
This is no place for...
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
12,000.
Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, to explore her life.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Hello? This is Montana Highway Patrol. You're looking for a couple of missing teenagers.
That's right. Last seen in a red Focus.
The steering wheel's getting stiff.
Lock the door. We're fine.
Got ourselves a predicament.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know seems to change, well, like every day. So what is it that you really need to know? Want to know to help you not just get through your day, but make the most of it. Feel smarter, feel better, feel happier. Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon? GMA 3, what you need to know. It's all about you. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. This is going to be so good. Wednesday night, get ready for
a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before.
Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families.
Living large.
But
holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
Where was all this money coming from?
Buckle up. Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con.
All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Good Morning America tomorrow morning. Wake up to real-time answers, real-time results. The morning after this historic election with the most powerful team in politics live. First thing in the morning, ABC. Good Morning America.
Cross my office off the list.
What if we pick for each other?
Please stop.
This is an ABC News special. There has never been an election quite like this, with so much on the line.
We are going to keep on working, we are going to keep on fighting, and we are going to keep on winning, winning, winning.
We choose hope over fear. We choose unity over division, science over fiction, and yes, we choose truth over lies. So it's time to stand up, take back our democracy.
Live from New York City and across the country, Election Night 2020. Now reporting, Chief Anchor George Stephanopoulos.
8 p.m. in the East, polls have just closed in 6.
Yeah, way too early. New Hampshire also too early to call. Just a few votes in New Jersey. Joe Biden is the projected winner at this hour. And in Maryland, we've got Joe Biden as the projected winner.
NBC projecting Biden the winner in Massachusetts as well. Also in Delaware, Biden wins. Biden also the projected winner in D.C.
All right, and Oklahoma will go for the president. In Illinois, we are calling it too early, but Biden is leading in Illinois. He's led in the polls. Connecticut, same thing. Too early, but Biden is leading.
Here's what's happening in Alabama right now. Too early to call. Too early in Maine as well. Same story in Mississippi, Missouri. Biden leading in Rhode Island, but that one's too early to call. Trump leading in Tennessee.
All right, so where does that put us? We've just made some calls. Here we go. Let's get to the map of 270. That's how you get elected president in this country, as we show Tennessee, but I think we can roll the map. And now we've got a few more numbers to report. Joe Biden, not surprisingly, carrying those big cities in the East, and we see Donald Trump in some of his strong red territory. Chuck, this is unfolding as expected.
Nobody's won a road game yet.
Yeah.
You know, Pat Riley used to say back in the 7-game series, you know, a series doesn't begin until somebody wins a road game. Well, a series doesn't an election night doesn't begin until we flip a red state blue or a blue state red.
And we get to the battlegrounds, and we still await those because they're just so tight.
They are. Let me go over to Florida, and let's see if we've got some of these new county numbers in here. And I just want to reset it just to see if we're going to start getting some of this vote in, if they're going to dump it fast. We're not. But look, as you can see here, let's reset it. Let's just remind people of Florida's tendencies here, right? Here we are in 2008. As you can see, nobody ever wins Florida in a blowout. Obama got 51, 50. Trump got 49. So as you can see, it's this 3-point, that was a landslide for Obama in 2008. But as you can see here, these margins are always pretty close, pretty close, pretty close. But I'll tell you, and so we've got, this is good news for Biden that he's now pulled in the lead, because if we go back to my county maps here, again, we know the vote that's coming in. This is heavy Trump country here. There's a few African-American counties in here that will produce some good vote for Trump, for Biden. But for the most part, that's going to be a load of vote out of there. So look, I'm going to go back to what I said before. We're sitting here. Biden's biggest problem is Miami right now. Let's go back. Let's see what the vote stands right now. He's dropped below 54%, 86% in. We're looking at 53.9 to 45.5. That's the bad news here for Joe Biden. He's performing 10 points less. The question is whether all of this little improvements for Joe Biden, whether it's a point here or 2 points there or 3 points there in these various counties. Can that make up for 10 points in Miami? It's Miami versus the margins.
Is this at all a bellwether to what we'll see in the other Sun Belt states?
No, I don't, because this is a unique, this was a unique Miami issue. Miami is Miami. You know, Miami is some would say is Hong Kong, right? The rest of Florida is sort of is kind of connected. Miami's its own thing. It's its own entity. I would say this: if this is the way Biden loses Florida, he probably can feel better about what's happening up north, because many of these other counties perform more like these Midwestern states, right? You know, I always joke, Florida, you know, basically the Midwest is down here. You've got the Northeast retirees are down in the Atlantic coast. So the piece of the entire battleground shows up in Florida. So if you're looking for a silver lining on the Biden side of the aisle, you can say, well, all of this other stuff makes you think you should do well in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, for what it's worth.
Let's bring in Casey into this conversation, because, Casey, one of the criticisms of the Biden campaign, and some of it was loud down in Florida from Biden supporters, was that he was not doing enough to get out the Latino vote in South Florida. We mentioned the Venezuelan Americans, the Cuban Americans, and it seems like that is coming to pass in Miami-Dade.
Savannah, that's absolutely true. And there were Democrats who were trying to sound the alarm on this. And remember, this socialism-related message, it's something that President Trump has literally been pushing for almost the entirety of his administration. I've sat through State of the Union addresses where he uses this term. I mean, this is something that he really focused on very much. And I think that not only was the goal here to try and do what we're seeing play out, apparently, which was, win over more of those voters, but cynics would say, and some Democrats will say, that it was also potentially a strategy of trying to convince these voters not to show up to the polls at all, to become demoralized about this, because this message was potentially attached to the Democrat Joe Biden. Of course, Biden's team focused much more, frankly, on the rebuild the blue wall strategy, and that's, of course, a set of states we've hardly turned to yet tonight: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where our conversation will inevitably turn later. But it's possible that they're paying the price for the decision in Miami-Dade County.
All right, we want to bring into the conversation now former Democratic Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill and conservative columnist and editor of National Review Rich Lowry. Both are NBC News political contributors. Claire, let me start with you in this idea. I think Andrea brought up this notion that Biden had been painted with a socialist brush very early on, and it was hard to get rid of. Do you buy into that?
I think it may resonate more in some of the communities in Miami-Dade and in Florida, namely those Cuban Americans. But if you look at the gauntlet that Trump has to run, he may get by Florida, but he's got big ones ahead of him yet. He's got to get through North Carolina. He's got to get through Georgia. He's got to get through the really tough one, which is Pennsylvania, before he can think about getting reelected. So it's going to be a long night. It looks like Florida is not going to be decisive one way or the other for a while. But, everybody was hoping it would be over early by winning Florida big. You can take a deep breath, grab a bottle of water, and hang in there. It's going to be a while.
All right, let me turn to Rich Lowry. Rich, like me, I know you hang on every word that Chuck Todd says. And were you watching when he started looking at some of those red counties in Florida where Biden seems to be overperforming Hillary Clinton? We know that obviously Trump has done well enough in Miami-Dade. Do you see any warning signals in those red counties in Florida that may portend in other states around the country?
We'll see. I mean, it seems clear one of the storylines of the night will be this shifting within the Republican coalition we saw in 2016, where Trump was shedding support in more traditional Republican affluent suburbs and then picking up support in working class areas, some of which were more traditionally Democrat. So it seems like he's going to lose more of the affluent suburbs. Can he make it up with more of his, turning out even more of his voters this time around? But Florida, if he pulls Florida out, and Claire's right, this is necessary for Trump. It's not for Biden. Trump has to have this. You can come up with theoretical scenarios where he wins without Florida, but it's very likely not going to happen. But it'll be a story of an incredibly robust state operation in Florida that focused on the Latino vote like a laser beam, and with the idea that they could actually win over Latinos, especially Latino men, and make a difference in a really close election. And it seems as though that theory might be proving out tonight down there.
Yeah, they had an aggressive turnout operation that the Trump campaign did as well, and turned out new voters of its own. We're watching as these results come in. Florida polls just closed a few moments ago. Kerry Sanders is in St. Petersburg, Florida, Pinellas County, which is a real crossroads county, Kerry, and a real bellwether there.
Absolutely. You know, they say as goes Pinellas County, so goes the state, because in the last 40 years, really since 1980, this county has called the election for who is the president-elect. And so a lot of eyes really on Pinellas County, and the technology is pretty sufficient here to tell us what's going on. Just remember, as we look at this, just because somebody's registered in a party doesn't mean they necessarily voted in that party. But as we take a look at the information that's being put up right now, it's a 79% turnout of voters here, which is really quite dramatic. We can see that the Democrats have voted with 207,000 plus, the Republicans 213,000. So there was a greater Republican turnout here, especially in a county where it's basically even between Republicans and Democrats. Now look at that yellow line. This is really the most important one that we're looking at. 133,000 plus voters with no party affiliation. Those are likely the ones who are going to make the decision, not only here in Pinellas County, but across the state. 27% of Florida voters have no party affiliation. And drilling down, as the campaigns have done, is they were trying to woo those voters 65 and plus in age, those non-party affiliated voters. Those are the ones in 2016 who significantly lent and went towards Trump, giving him the election, and the belief is that that is the same group that will have an impact again in Florida with this election for president. One of the things to note that you all have been talking about with Miami-Dade and the Cuban-American population, just consider for a moment as we look at this, we have 930,000 Cuban Americans of voting age, primarily in South Florida, but up along the I-4 corridor, sort of Orange County, Osceola, we're talking about in the Orlando area, we have 875,000 Puerto Ricans. They tend to be Democrats. We have the Republicans who are the Cuban Americans who are primarily Republicans. So as the night progresses, it will be interesting to see whether that Puerto Rican vote winds up in some way canceling out some of that Cuban American vote. All eyes on Florida, though, as you guys have been saying here.
Yeah, Kerry, and I'm sitting here looking, 87% in statewide over there.
Well, look, I mean, look, here's the thing. We have 1.5 million votes remaining, but I'll be honest, as Kerry was talking, Trump's lead went from 0.6%, and I've just been watching it go. As you can see here, it's now jumped to more than a percentage point. And again, this is because all of this red is coming in. And I'll tell you, the more I look at this, the more it doesn't, things are not getting, things are getting better for Donald Trump. Let me just take you to one county that was a Trump-Obama county that we cared about a lot here, and it was St. Lucie County. This is St. Lucie, I believe, Vero Beach, right around there, up the Gold Coast. This is the county that Obama carried. So when you win Florida, Obama carried it. Trump narrowly carried it, and he won Florida. As you can see here, Trump's holding his number on this one. Biden's improved. It's another one of these 2-point improvements. But the question is, it's not looking to me as if the numbers in this margins, that he's closing the margins enough to make up for. And the big one, we're gonna look at this and we'll see what the margin is right now. Yeah. Right, you look at 117,000. I could probably find the vote right here in Miami-Dade. If you just look 2 years ago, she won Miami-Dade by almost 300,000 votes. Right now, Biden's only winning Miami-Dade by 28 and 60, 88,000 votes. All right, think about that. 300,000, 88,000. So he's got, and she lost the state. So he's got to find more than 220. He's got to find some 300,000 extra votes in all these margins, if not 500,000 extra votes. I'm just saying, Florida looks like an uphill climb for Joe Biden.
Let's not forget, Barack Obama spent a lot of time in Florida here in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, he did. I think a lot of questions are going to be asked, though, to go back to, did they hear the calls of Miami-Dade enough? Look, the Biden campaign will get criticized if they're not carrying Georgia or North Carolina. The criticism about their Florida strategy will either amp up or down depending on how well they do in neighboring Georgia and up the coast in North Carolina.
All right, and we just projected Tennessee going to the president. No surprise there. Donald Trump, the winner of the 11 electoral votes there.
Kristen Welker, let's bring you into this Florida conversation. If we go back to the beginning of the evening and Chuck and his path to victory, it didn't seem to loom as large or as important to Joe Biden. Had they already kind of figured they had other paths around Florida?
They absolutely have, Lester, and I think that's really the key. Look, I just heard from a Democrat in Florida who's very close to the Biden campaign who acknowledges that this is really an uphill battle at this point, watching these numbers come in. But I've also heard from Biden campaign officials who say they still feel good about the night because they have several paths that do not include Florida, that do rely on Midwestern states. That blue wall that Hillary Clinton was not able to hold back in 2016, that vice president campaigned so aggressively in Michigan, Wisconsin. So those are the states that they're really turning to and focused on. And they say they feel good about. They feel good about the turnout, in the suburban areas that they will need in order to carry that state. And so that's really where their focus has shifted at this point. And look, I've been talking to the Biden campaign and top Democrats about Florida for quite some time. He visited 4 times. So he did make a real push for the state. They, of course, want to win Florida, but again, they have multiple other paths that do not include it, that in addition to those Midwestern states that I just mentioned would include North Carolina and Georgia, and so that is where their focus is going to be at this hour. Lester.
Kristen Welker, thank you. We're back after a short break with more election results. Stay with us.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. Election night here in the U.S. and standing by live for us is Florida Senator, former Governor, Republican Rick Scott. Senator, good to see you, and I'm sure you're watching those returns in your home state as closely as we are. How do you feel at this moment? Do you feel you're ready to say this is going to go Trump's way tonight in Florida?
Absolutely. Look at the big key is Miami-Dade. You know, I've always said Trump was going to do well with his Hispanic vote, and he did in Miami-Dade. It's very important. It was very important to my wins. I won the Hispanic vote in all 3 of my races. Trump did very well with the Hispanic vote. You can't do as badly as Biden did it in Miami and expect to win statewide. So the Panhandle is going to continue to come in. It's going to come in big for President Trump, and I think he's going to have a bigger win tonight than he did back in 2016. And by the way, Trump's on the right side of the issues for Florida. We don't want taxes to go up. We want somebody that's going to stand up against the Castro regime and Maduro. We want somebody that is going to focus on our law enforcement, the economy. Those are things that Floridians care about. And so that's why Trump's going to win. And by the way, the Democrats didn't have a grassroots effort. They didn't have a great grassroots effort down here. This whole race.
And Senator, that's your view of Florida. What about the other Sun Belt states? Is Florida a one-off, or do you see a similar trend potentially in some of those other states?
Well, you know, I don't follow them as well. You know, I've been really focused on making sure we keep a Republican Senate. So I hope that David Perdue can win tonight, and then hope we have a good runoff for the second seat in Georgia. I think Lindsey Graham's going to have a big win. I think there's a good chance that Tom Tillis can win now. I think we're going to have a good night for Republican senators because, again, we've got great candidates and we're on the right side of the issues for the Americans.
Are there any counties that surprised you tonight, Senator Scott? Anything where you thought that the president would do better or that Joe Biden would do better other than Miami-Dade, which we just discussed?
Well, I think if you look at the numbers, we don't have the final numbers for Pinellas and Hillsborough. I mean, I think Joe Biden did a little bit better there than a lot of people thought. I think the big thing is probably Pinellas and Hillsborough, where Biden did a little bit better, it appears, than people thought. But he did so much worse in Miami that it's hard to to come back from what happened to him in Miami. It's really the key to how I won my races. Is you got to get the Hispanic vote out, and you got to get the Hispanic vote out for you. And that's what President Trump did. I put up an ad to try to help President Trump get the vote out. And today, you saw Republicans came out significantly for him. And so it's just, big turnout. And it was in this case, I think it's going to be a big night for Donald Trump in Florida.
All right. Well, Senator Scott, thanks so much for talking to us. Good to have you on.
Thank you, sir.
Nice seeing you.
Honestly, there's not anybody who is more aware of how you win Florida in a tight race. This, Rick Scott, 3 races in the last decade, decided by.
Let me just pause a second and note that we have this Senate call from Kentucky. Mitch McConnell, the incumbent, will hold on against Amy McGrath.
All right, and we'll also have another call from West Virginia. President Trump will take it as expected.
All right, we will take a break and be back with more of NBC's Decision 2020 election night coverage.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
To NBC News 2020 election coverage. We have got another call that's in the state of Connecticut, and when NBC News projects Joe Biden as the winner in Connecticut, not a big surprise there.
The votes are rolling in. We're looking at Ohio now. It was a battleground for years and years, but it wasn't in 2016. Trump took it by 8, I believe.
Trump took it by 8 points.
Exit polls that are interesting in terms of
We are.
demographics.
I mean, look, I know people are watching the raw returns come in, and the governor, Mike DeWine, said, hey, the Democratic numbers will be high early, Republican numbers come in, but he thought it was going to be close. The exit polls indicate that. And look at the suburban and urban and rural splits here. You know, Trump's vote in 2016, he did, you know, it was sort of 38% of it was from the urban area. What we've seen, while he's increased his margin, he's increased his vote share in rural counties in Ohio, he's decreased his share in suburban and in urban. So the question is, again, everything is a margin game here. Now, if you're Joe Biden, you'd rather trade suburban votes for rural votes, suburban counties for rural counties. There's just more raw vote there. The question is if it's enough. We've seen some suburban white vote has dipped 7 points from 4 years ago, and Hillary Clinton lost it by 8. Ohio's going to be close.
All right, Andrew told us to watch those suburban women, and so we will. But we got to take a brief pause in the action now. More election night results to come. You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. Election night 2020. Let's show you where things stand now. Too close to call in Florida. You can see the numbers right there. North Carolina also too early to call in North Carolina.
Polls have closed in Ohio. It is too early to call. We've seen some interesting exit polls so far. Pennsylvania, that's going to take a long time. It is far too early to call that one. And in Georgia, this is a race that Democrats are pinning their hopes on, hoping to turn that red state blue this year, but it's too early to call.
South Carolina, it is too early to call. And in Virginia, the presidential race too early, but Biden still hanging on to a lead there. Go to Andrea Mitchell right now. Andrea.
Well, one of the important factors that Joe Biden was counting on was reaching out to seniors, having a big advantage with seniors on the coronavirus. But interestingly, in the exit polls, it shows that the economy was a more important issue than the coronavirus, and that Donald Trump was given better marks for handling the economy than Joe Biden. So still, the economy was the most important factor, which is seniors, which may be surprising, may be very important in Florida, also in Pennsylvania, which has a lot of senior citizens.
Yeah, that could be a telltale exit poll for sure. Here we are saying Arkansas is up. Too early to call. The poll just closed there. And our map to 270. Let's throw it up there as we turn to Chuck. You see where it stands, Biden with the lead, but boy, it's early in the night. What do you got your eye on?
Well, look, let me just run through all of the big states we care about. Not much in Pennsylvania's in, but you want to see what little bit is trickling in. And here, this is what I'm always curious about. We all are. Okay, our orange and our yellow. Boy, I can barely see it there. You know what that means? We got a long way to go in Pennsylvania. So let's, there's a lot of work to do in Pennsylvania. But let me take you over to next door, Ohio here. We told you before the break that there was some evidence in the exit poll. There's no doubt Biden is improving. Governor Mike DeWine said to me today on air, hey, essentially the first half of the vote should be Dem leaning. The second half should be R leaning. Look, I like to mess around with the Eries. We got Erie County. Erie County is going to be important in Pennsylvania, and Erie County could be telling here too. Right now, and it's only half the vote in, you see that Joe Biden is winning it. But you can see why I care about Erie County. When Obama carried Ohio, he carried Erie County. When Trump carried Ohio, he carried Erie County. So, look, along the lake here, and I told you, along these lake counties, this is where Trump cleaned up. This is where Biden has to improve. Halfway through, don't pop any champagne corks if you're the Democrats here, but clearly Ohio much more competitive. Let me take you down to North Carolina right now, another state watching. More than 60% of the vote is in. What are we up to? 62 here. And I was talking about margins. Biden had a bad day in Miami-Dade. He's got a really good day in Raleigh and in the triangle here in Wake County. Let me show you something here. You see this split 82% in, 65-33. Let me show you Wake County over the last 3 cycles. As you can see here, Joe Biden, Wake County, this is the Research Triangle. You guys know this. This is, hotbed, a lot of college-educated suburban voters here. And as you can see, this is a case where Joe Biden's outperforming his former running mate by a big-time margin. He's already got a ton of vote here. He's got almost double the vote of Trump here. And as you can see, Clinton only got 100,000 advantage there. So already big margins there. By the way, the story is the same in Mecklenburg here, which is Charlotte. I'll show you, as you can see here, he's just already overperforming big time Clinton and Obama. So when you look at what's going on in North Carolina, again.
Show us a red county, because you're telling us this election is going to come down county by county.
That's
Who runs
right.
up the score in
well,
their
look,
county?
and I always like to spend time out here in these more rural counties. These are big Trump counties, so we can see, is he hitting his numbers here, right? Biden 3 points better. Okay, I'm going to go here, Henderson County. Again, rural county. Again, this is Biden 8 points better, 78% in. Keep going down over here in this part of North Carolina, Rutherford County, another one, Biden improving by 3 points. This is the story across the board. And again, I do want to point out, and it's right down here. Look at this. I worried that my board wasn't going to be letting me write all the way down here on the edge.
Continue to the next.
Anyway, yeah, that didn't work out very well. But I swear to God, there's a 2% number here. I mean, it is amazing here that you're seeing that. Andrew's brought it up. I mean, that's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
You're saying that there was a third-party vote that drew votes from Clinton in 2016. We don't have that same third-party vote this time.
No, we don't.
This is head-to-head, and it's a whole different
Let's just take a look at Florida and check back in. And as you can see, the lead keeps growing for Donald Trump. So this is not looking like, yes, there's plenty of vote left. Let's look at our gray space here. Still got 1 million votes, so you can't sit here and call anything when you're separated by 225,000 votes here, 1 million votes, but you guys can do the math. Joe Biden's got to win a lot of those 1 million votes to make up a 226,000 vote deficit here. Florida is looking a little red tonight.
All right.
Let's bring in Kate Snow and talk a little bit. Go back to Pennsylvania if we can right now. Kate, you've spent a lot of time there. This is a place that we saw a lot of Obama voters break for Trump last time around, and then some second thoughts from some of those voters. You tapped into it. I tapped into it in my visit there last week. Describe the dynamics at play in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I was in Western Pennsylvania, which I think is important to note right off, Lester, because Pennsylvania is a complicated state. It's not all one kind of voter. Where I was over by Pittsburgh, I was in Beaver County, which is northwest of Pittsburgh, right along the county borders the Ohio border, and it has the Ohio River running right through it. That was steel country. That was a place where people had union jobs. They worked in the steel mills up until the 70s and into the 80s when those steel mills started going away. And what I found there is a lot of voters who said, look, I was a Democrat by tradition. My parents were Democrats, my grandparents were Democrats, but in recent years, those Democrats, even if they're still registered Democrat, have really swung. The county went for President Trump back in 2016 by 19 points. This was a place where people really were drawn in by President Trump's message. So even if they're nominally Democrats, they're now voting for President Trump. So what we were looking at is, are they still going to be with President Trump, and what kind of numbers in Beaver County this time around? And I think what's interesting is I met a lot of people who said, yeah, we're still with him. I met a couple named Randy and Kathy who, again, used to be diehard Democrats, and now they're really into Trump. They've already, they had the big sign in their yard. But then I also talked to a woman named Marion Wise who voted for Trump. She said she never actually thought he'd win in 2016, but she was attracted to his message of drain the swamp. And now she's completely disenchanted with him. She's just over President Trump and not going to go there. So I think that's going to be a big question, is those red counties, those counties that we think are going to go red for President Trump in Pennsylvania, particularly in the West, perhaps also in the Northeast. There are a lot of rural areas of Pennsylvania. What are they going to do on this election night? Is it going to look like what you're seeing in Florida, where red counties get even more red?
Kate Snow, thank you, Kate.
All right, the economy, the big issue Andrew just mentioned, is showing up in the exit poll. Senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule with us. What are you watching? What are you seeing tonight, Stephanie?
Savannah, we know that people vote based on what affects them, not offends them, and that absolutely means money. Back in February, President Trump thought he'd be running and winning on the economy as his top issue. COVID changed that. And while normally Republicans do very well on economic issues, we've seen Joe Biden start chipping away at the president's lead on the economy because we don't have a national plan to address COVID. And until we address the health crisis, we're still going to be in this financial crisis. Just think about it, Savannah. While a portion of the country is doing well economically, our recovery has been like a K for people who can work from home, who can afford to buy homes or cars while interest rates are so low, or people who are invested in the markets. But for millions of others, they're out of work And if they're out of work, they're at risk of being without health care. We've got a lot of small businesses at risk. We've got a divided economy at maybe the most crucial time of the year.
All right, thank you very much, Stephanie. We want to turn now to former counselor to the president and manager of his 2016 campaign, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, we've been talking about Florida. It seems to be trending in the right direction for your candidate, President Trump. Are you exhaling yet?
No, we know we've got a long way to go. Even in 2016, Savannah, we waited until 2:30 for Secretary Clinton to call and concede. These things can go late into the night, but we do like what's happened in Florida for several reasons. Obviously, it's an incredibly important electoral vote-rich state, but also it's a representation of the country. Many people are moving there from other states. Obviously, 70% of Miami-Dade roughly is Hispanic, and we see that Vice President Biden has underperformed there, but we also are looking at some of the exit polls among Hispanics elsewhere. So in Florida, plus 27 for Hillary Clinton, plus 8 for Joe Biden. In Georgia, plus 40 for Hillary Clinton, plus 25 for Joe Biden. Ohio, among Hispanics, plus 41 for Hillary Clinton, now plus 24 for Joe Biden. So I think that the box that people try to put some of us in based on our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our age, is really being tossed on its head in this election. Hispanics care about far more than immigration. That is important, but they also care about many other issues. Seniors care more about than just health care, perhaps for Medicare. They certainly care about that, but it's plus. And women care more than just about abortion. I think voters are telling us all, reminding us all, that we throw into our voter cauldron many different issues, ideas, images, and individuals, and we stir it up and then we make our choice. The Trump campaign very much likes what they see in the day of voting because we know that the Democrats did a fantastic job banking that early, really first day of early voting. In fact, in places like North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Michigan, they had huge gains in the first day. If you wanted to vote against Donald Trump for the last 4 years, you were ready. You stood in line for hours and you did it. But you can vote early, you can't vote often. You can only vote against him one time, and we're counting on the people who turned out to the rallies and even those who didn't want to put signs in the yard, stickers on the bumper, to turn out today. But we're patient people. We'll see this through the night or through the week if we need to. And I think just like Chuck Todd was going over, we're looking at some counties as well to see 2016, 2020 performance, but also looking at some surprises. Sometimes voters repeat history and sometimes they make history.
Hey, Kellyanne, I'm curious, are you comfortable, considering that some of the exit poll numbers you've seen in the prioritizing of the virus versus the economy, and how that looked in certain battleground states? First of all, you don't have a Miami-Dade and a lot of these other battleground states. That's a unique unicorn you guys created, and I think you guys deserve a ton of credit. It's a 4-year project, so kudos to you and that organization. That is an impressive feat. But I am curious, are you comfortable closing the way the president did on the virus, given what you've seen in the exits in a lot of these other states that where a majority of the voters appear to be on the other side of virus versus the economy?
I've always thought the president should go back in time, Chuck, and really talk more about all that was accomplished. He talks about China and European travel being shut down early and how that saved lives. But, you know, we were in lockdown at the White House for quite a while. He couldn't go to Mar-a-Lago, Bedminster, rallies, foreign travel, nothing. No visits to states. There was nothing. And what were we doing? 7 days a week in that task force. My seat was right behind Drs. Birx and Fauci. Actually, I learned a great deal from both of them. And the president signed into law $1 trillion worth in the CARES Act. PPP to help save these small businesses and save American jobs. PPE, billions of masks and gloves and gowns, and of course ventilators, thankfully, for anybody who needed it. So I've always been urging, go back in time and recognize that we women are the chief healthcare officers of our households. We control about 2 out of every 3 healthcare dollars spent in this country. And even if you, as a female voter, say, I'm not particularly worried about me or someone in my household, God forbid, contracting or dying from COVID, I'm worried about other people. I'm not just a direct stakeholder, I'm a shareholder for other people in my life. I'm worried about Aunt Edna in the nursing home. I'm worried about Grandma who we haven't been able to visit. I'm worried about my kids' school reopening too quickly. And I've been a very loud voice about healthcare being a very important issue to women. And I think that going back in time and taking more credit and reminding people all that we did came together. Do you remember, Chuck, in March, the president had a 62% approval rating for handling of COVID. And I remember telling him in the Oval Office, you've never had a 62% approval rating on anything, including the economy. You've presided over a dynamic economy. I think at that time the country really was rallying around the flag and saying, let's all come together and watch the mobilization. Now, I think the president's done a great job reminding Americans of the facts, that the vaccine development under Operation Warp Speed is tremendous. As Director Holness says at NIH, he's never seen anything come together so swiftly for the government and the private sector. In less time, Chuck, than it takes to have a baby, we've developed a vaccine. We've got 3 or 4 in the final phases. That's great news for everyone. That will help the therapeutics mitigate the virus. The vaccine will eradicate the virus.
All right, Kellyanne.
And hopefully that will come sometime by the end of the year or early next year.
Kellyanne Conway, thank you so much for being with us. I want to get some thoughts from Casey Hunt.
Well, at this hour, Lester, as I'm continuing to talk to sources across the country who are watching numbers in these key states, at Florida, I would say you were just talking a little bit about some of the reasons why Florida seems to be trending for President Trump. But Democrats I'm talking to are essentially saying that they're at the point where they're basically ready to write it off for Joe Biden. And they're starting to talk about the numbers in the suburbs, and they're pointing to Chuck Todd's mother's county, Seminole County, in the suburbs of Orlando, as a place to look to try and see if those kinds of trends are going to be replicated in other suburbs in Atlanta, for example, in Georgia or in Phoenix. So I think the way this conversation is changing tells you that they realize that they're potentially having a tough night here in Florida. There's also a couple House races in Florida where we may see some surprises, particularly Congresswoman Donna Shalala, who's a Democrat down in the Miami-Dade area, who may actually be on track to lose her race. And the House, remember, every member of Congress is up for re-election, and we have been anticipating that Democrats were likely to win seats in the House, potentially in the single digits. They would have considered double digits to be a good night, but that Shalala race potentially a warning sign for them.
All right, Casey, thank you very much. If you had Chuck Todd's mom in your drinking game, you're having a good night so far. We're going to be back in a moment. More Decision 2020 election night coverage in just a moment. A live look, Senator Mitch McConnell delivering his victory speech. He's headed back to the Senate. Will he be majority leader or minority leader only this night? And the voters of the United States will tell. We'll be watching back in a moment.
31 years, America has dominated one challenge after.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. At top of the hour, we're going to have a lot more poll closings, but let's talk about Pennsylvania. Something tells me Andrea Mitchell will be talking about it all night long and then some.
And then for several days. One of the really important things about Pennsylvania is that Hillary Clinton only won the suburban counties, the 4 big suburban counties outside of Philadelphia by 180,000 votes. That was not nearly enough to offset Donald Trump's big strength out west, where Casey Hunt was talking about, Kate Snow was talking about, and the rural vote, the steel workers, the energy industry. In any case, what they now think is that the suburban collar counties around Philadelphia will produce a 300,000 vote edge. That's what they really need to do for Joe Biden, and that's what they're looking at. The other thing was that it was 70-30 in those rural western Pennsylvania areas.
70-30 for Trump
over
yes.
Clinton.
Yes.
They think that Joe Biden, coming from Scranton, being a working-class union guy, can shave that to 64-36, something of that nature. The other surprising thing is that, contrary to what the Biden people had expected, we're seeing in the exit polls that nationally, seniors are going marginally for Trump over Biden. People had thought that that would be a strong Biden vote. Seniors worried about health care, worried about COVID. But so far, it's 51-48, something like that.
So seniors did not abandon Trump over the coronavirus, but we'll see what happens in the suburbs, as you say.
Let's take a look at North Carolina. A fair amount of the votes in there, Chuck.
No, a lot of the votes in. Biden's holding a lead here. As you can see, he's got a 219,000 vote lead. I want to show you something here just so you can see how much vote is left. So he's got about 200,000 vote lead. We think there's about 1.8 million vote still left to come in. And you see gray counties, for what, in case you're wondering when you see this, it means we have no vote in them yet, if it's gray. So it's stuff like this. Let me just quickly show you something here, just to show you already. Joe Biden's vote total here, 2.149, okay, with 70% in. Let me just show you Hillary Clinton. When all the votes were counted, it was 2.189. First of all, you could see turnout is way up, but you could see Democratic turnout in particular. And the story is right now in these suburban counties. I showed you Mecklenburg here. Right now, he's got a nearly 200,000 vote lead out of there. Hillary Clinton didn't get but 140,000 out of it. And you can see here, he's even outperforming. Let me go to 08 Obama, because 08 Obama carried North Carolina. And as you can see, he got 100,000 out of Mecklenburg. He could get 200,000. That's how you win the state of North Carolina, guys.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Joining us now, Jose Diaz-Balart. He's in Florida. He's the anchor of Weekend Nightly News and Noticias Telemundo. And Jose, the Florida story really focuses on the Latino vote and a massive get out the vote and persuasion operation dedicated to South Florida, a place you know well.
I do indeed. Good evening. And it's going to be the story if indeed Donald Trump ends up winning the state of Florida. It could have a lot to do with specifically South Florida and the Latino vote in South Florida, specifically Cuban-American voters, Venezuelan-American voters, Nicaraguan-American voters, and some Colombian-American voters that for the last 3 years, Donald Trump has been working very consistently, insistently, and also there's been a very strong push for the last months that Democrats are socialist, and that attack went unanswered for a long time. Maybe that will have some impact on how Florida ends up. We'll wait and see.
All right, Jose, my friend, thank you, sir. Much more to come on this election night. We'll be right back.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Well, we're pushing on toward the 9 o'clock Eastern hour, and there will be a lot of closings coming up at 9 o'clock. Let's walk you through them. Battlegrounds, including Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin.
And the fact that we're calling Texas something of a battleground this year shows you what an extraordinary year it is. In just a few moments, we will have those poll closings. We are starting to fill out our map already. Some surprises. And one thing that is not surprising, Florida was tight, but so far it is trending in the president's direction. A must-win for him tonight.
And as we wait that next big round of poll closings at the top of the hour, we'll pause here briefly. You are watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
We're about to pick up a little momentum on the evening. At the top of the hour, about a minute away, 14 states with a combined total of 156 electoral votes about to close, including 5 battleground states, Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin. These are all very important states we've been watching and potential paths to victory for both candidates.
And let's look at some of the results we do have in. Florida is counting votes fast. It's too close to call there. Pennsylvania, too early to call.
In Georgia, it's too early to call. Also, North Carolina, too early. And Ohio, too early.
And let's look at Ohio. It is too early to call there, too. And for folks wondering, yes, we had early voting either in person or by mail like we've never seen before. 100 million people voted before Election Day. And if you are wondering, yes, we've taken that into account when we give you that expected vote number. It includes the estimated early vote as well as the day of vote. And we're awaiting those 9 o'clock poll closings. Texas and Arizona, big Latino populations, but a different kind than what we've been talking about in Florida. Andrea, hold that thought because we do want to mention, here we go, Texas, too early to call at this hour. In Arizona, it is also too early to call, as you might expect.
Michigan, too early to call.
Got some results in from Minnesota. Not many, actually. Too early to call there. Wisconsin, it's going to be a long one. And in New York, Biden will pull that one out and not shock anyone.
Colorado, too early, but Biden has a lead there. Kansas, too early. And Louisiana, too early. Biden, though, with a lead.
All right, and let's look at Nebraska. Too early to call there. We're keeping an eye on that one particular congressional district that can be quite competitive. In New Mexico, it is too early to call. In North Dakota, too early to call, but the president is leading.
Same story in South Dakota. The president leading too early to call. And Wyoming, it's too early to call. Trump with a lead there.
So let's put up our map of 270 and let's see how it shakes out at 9 o'clock Eastern time, 6 o'clock Pacific, and there you have it. Numbers don't quite tell the story. We're going to have to wait for all the votes to be counted. Andrea, we were talking about Texas and Arizona. Now the polls have closed. They'll start counting the votes. The Latino vote, incredibly important there.
Incredibly important. And as Chuck was saying, Miami-Dade, Florida, the Cuban-American community is a unicorn. But it's a very different kind of Latino vote in Arizona and in Texas. In Texas, Latinos going by plus 19 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. In Arizona, Latinos going plus 30 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Obviously a different composition, only plus 8 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in Florida. So that shows you the disparity where you've got different group of Latino vote in Arizona. Out west, you have more Mexican Americans, more from other parts of South America, less of the, obviously, very few of the Cuban Americans, and you have very different ideology and different voting.
The Latino vote's going to be big in Arizona and Texas, as is the suburban vote, but there's obviously big swaths of rural parts of those states that tend to be Trump country.
It is, and Texas is going to be, by the way, we already have a lot of vote in because they do a lot of early voting, but they're going to be in there. But I want to take us to Ohio. Because Ohio, believe it or not, has been sitting there. Again, we're still waiting for somebody to win a road game, right? We have yet to have a flip. But as you can see, we got 53% of the vote in. Biden's holding about a 266,000 vote advantage here. And just so you show, we still got a ton of vote, right? Nearly 3 million votes are left to count. As you can see here, the breakouts, just so you can see, 1.3 of the early absentee has been counted. Mike DeWine basically said half the vote was early and half the vote was expected today. Governor of Ohio, on Election Day. So, but let me just tell you, one of the other things we have, if he's going to win Ohio, if Joe Biden's going to make a comeback in Ohio, he's going to have to flip a whole bunch of what we call the Obama-Trump counties. All of these counties here right now, and what you see in the red, if they're red, they're still trending Trump, and if they're blue, they're trending Biden. So we can see here, Wood County, a small county here. This is right now, but you can see Trump narrowly carried it, but he carried it by 8 points because ton of third-party vote here. Ton of third-party vote in Ohio did really well. Johnson did much better there, but as you can see, this is a county that Obama carried. Biden hasn't caught his number there, but he's getting close, and he's obviously going to outperform Obama 12. So I'm going to be monitoring all of these Obama Trump counties, particularly in Ohio, because the only path for Biden to somehow pull the Ohio upset is if he's going to take most of these counties that Trump carried and flips most of them, if not all of them, back to blue.
But polls have had the president pretty far ahead in Ohio.
Well, all this year, it's been interesting. He's been ahead, but the margins have been small. It's been a little bit of older voters, and there is a bit of Joe Biden. It plays a little bit better in Ohio than maybe any other Democrat that had run for president during this primary.
I want to put up Florida again because we've changed our characterization there, or have we? Okay, Trump now officially leading in Florida. 29 electoral votes are watching there. Chuck.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Kristen Welker, who's at Biden headquarters. Hey, Kristen, what's the talk there as Florida starts to slip out of their hands?
Well, they are acknowledging that, Savannah, and I'm told by officials that they're in a wait-and-see mode, but they still feel very confident about their path to 270. And look, we go back to this idea that they fought hard for Florida, but didn't need Florida in order to win. There are a number of other paths, but the question is, what does this potentially mean about Georgia, about North Carolina? I put that question to a campaign official who said not a whole lot. Look, they think that the electorate is unique in Florida for all of the reasons that you've been talking about, particularly in the Miami-Dade area. They think that the president's attacks trying to characterize Joe Biden as socialist stuck. Obviously, that's a characterization that he would reject outright. But one top Democrat telling me they still feel very solid about their chances in Georgia and North Carolina. Now, what if they don't win either state? Well, officials tell me that is okay because Joe Biden still has a path to 270 without winning those two states. He would need to win Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And so that is why you have Joe Biden visiting Pennsylvania 14 times, more than any other battleground state since he won the nomination. That's why he was there again today in Scranton, in Philadelphia, really trying to drive up the vote in Philadelphia, in the suburbs. Of course, that part of the Obama coalition that did not turn out in force in 2016. He needs it if he's going to pull out a victory in the all-important state of Pennsylvania. Savannah and Lester.
All right, let's bring in Hallie Jackson right now at the White House. Hallie?
So we've been talking about Ohio. Chuck just had that up on the big board there. That's a really interesting state because the Trump campaign, folks that I've been talking to throughout the day and into the evening here, had been feeling confident about the way that was going to go. Based on some of the polling that Savannah mentioned, they'd been seeing something similar internally. That was actually one of the battleground states that they felt most confident about, along with Florida. So that is one that we're watching very closely, given what Chuck is referencing and the way that, again, with still very early in the night, still a lot of vote to come in, but with what we're seeing in some parts of Ohio and what we're looking for there. You've also got the state, as Kristen was talking about with the Biden campaign, of Pennsylvania. That is actually the place where President Trump campaigned more than anywhere else. And I can tell you that there are some counties that the Trump team is looking at tonight. So Dauphin County, for example, that's kind of in the central eastern part of the state near Harrisburg. You've got some of those collar counties right around Philadelphia, Bucks County, Chester County, Montgomery County. They're looking at Erie County, for example, in the western part of the state, a more sort of rural area, an area where the president feels confident confident. He has spent so much time in that state because it is critically important. Another state the president has spent a lot of time in is North Carolina. I was just there yesterday, actually, in Fayetteville, and I can tell you that folks in President Trump's orbit are looking specifically at some of those, if we could go back to that big board, when we do, those counties still in gray, right around Raleigh-Durham, right? Because that is going to be really important. You can see I'm there still in white here. Joe Biden needs to do well there. They're wondering what the margins are going to be. A lot of eyes on North Carolina here. And then the other state that I'll mention is Georgia, too. Looking at what the president's performance will be, that is a state that, again, is sort of on the cautiously optimistic to optimistic bubble for Team Trump based on our latest reporting.
All right, Hallie, thank you. And joining us now, NBC News contributor Hugh Hewitt, host of The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network, a Trump supporter, and Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino, a Biden supporter. Welcome to both of you. Let me talk to you, Maria Teresa, how you feel about what has happened in Florida. We haven't called it, but of course the president is said to be leading, and the results in Miami-Dade disappointing for Joe Biden, in particular among Latino votes.
So, first of all, everybody knew that that Florida was going to be the problem child. It's a very close call. As Andrea was mentioning earlier, that the Latino vote is not monolith. But for folks watching really closely, the other states that are up for grabs are Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, and Arizona. 4 of those states, and this is what really differentiates the Latino vote in Florida compared to the other ones, is that all of them had local legislation that had show me your paper anti-immigrant laws. That was a political awakening moment for the Latino community roughly about 6-7 years ago. And you see a whole slate of candidates that have not only run for office, but are quite competitive. You see that in Texas, you see that in North Carolina, you see that in Georgia, and absolutely in Arizona. And you also see an aging in of the Latino population. For example, in Texas, you have 25% of Latino youth unregistered voters are in Texas, and they're outperforming. 33% of the people in the Latino community that sat it out last time, Savannah, are voting again. So you see a huge surge in these populations where in these states where there has been a lot of friction and a lot of anti-immigrant policies. Florida is simply, that's not the case. They don't have those really diminishing, difficult pieces of legislation that racially profile the Latino community.
All right, Hugh, let me bring in here. Talk about North Carolina. What do you see there that may worry you or may encourage you?
The good news out of North Carolina is that it's more solidly Tom Tillis than I had expected it to be at this hour. In fact, the Senate everywhere is looking very good for Republicans. John James, I believe, is running ahead of President Trump in Michigan. The early numbers on David Perdue look very good vis-a-vis John Ossoff. It looks like a runoff in the special. And I spoke to Joni Ernst earlier today. She's feeling very confident in Iowa. Susan Collins is feeling confident in Maine. And so, as good as I feel about the president right now and the Senate, I go back to Ohio, what Chuck was looking at, my hometown of Trumbull County, is first went for the President Trump in 2016 for the first time for a Democrat since Richard Nixon in 1972. Can he hang on there? And the big difference in Ohio that I know Chuck knows, and you guys will know, is that Rob Portman is not on the ballot this time, providing an additional kind of ground game and strength. Rob Portman, one of the most popular Republicans in Ohio, is not on the ballot. He helped get the president over the line 4 years ago. So I'm watching that with great concern, but I am very cheered by the Florida numbers. There are some people, I know NBC has not called Florida, but some people have called Florida for President Trump. And so I'm very cheered that that's an early call. And I extrapolate that out to a few congressional districts in California where that voter who left a socialist country, that's how I'm characterizing it. That would include Venezuelans, that would include Nicaraguans, that would include people, of course, from Cuba. I think that vote, as Maria was talking about, is one that we've got to keep an eye on in the California congressional district that will matter. Right now, I'm pretty happy, with the exception of I would love to see Ohio get some more red votes pretty quickly.
All right, Hugh and Maria, thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in Casey Hunt. I know you've got some reporting on North Carolina, which we're watching closely, Texas as well.
That's right, Savannah. As I've been talking to sources on both sides of the aisle, I mean, one of the places that I try to look is to find agreement in terms of what we're seeing. And both sides of the aisle do seem to be in agreement that Tom Tillis, who's running for Senate in North Carolina, seems to be performing better, certainly than many of my sources expected he might. And I will say both Democratic and Republican sources who were pretty concerned about Tillis, if you were a Republican, and whether he was going to be able to hang on. And that, of course, raises questions about where things stand in the presidential race, which my sources are also saying is very, very close, but my Democratic sources are less optimistic about it than they were just an hour or so ago. And that's a trend that's holding across the Sun Belt, Texas as well. There was a chance that Democrats were perhaps going to take back the Texas State House. That has incredible repercussions as we head into a season of redistricting. They're now not optimistic that that's something that they're going to be able to pull off, although we still have a lot of data out there. There's also questions about Georgia. Senator David Perdue, a Republican, who also potentially, we had talked about, was in danger from a Democratic challenger. Some of the conversations heading into the night were, would David Perdue's opponent get 50%? Increasingly, it's now looking like Perdue may be in much better shape. That also raises questions about where the Biden campaign stands in Georgia, although my sources are also saying that there do seem to be a fair number of ticket splitters, people that are voting for Joe Biden, but who are also voting for David Perdue. So that underscores this trend that perhaps people are voting for Republican senators, but are willing to take a look at Joe Biden, Savannah.
All right, Casey, thank you. And let's look at some of the Senate races at this hour. There's a hot race going in Arizona between Mark Kelly, the former astronaut, and Martha McSally, the incumbent there. We are awaiting vote. Arizona does almost all of its voting by mail, but hasn't reported votes out yet in any significance. Here in Colorado, Cory Gardner, the incumbent, is widely expected to potentially lose his seat tonight. And sure enough, former Governor John Hickenlooper is leading in that race.
All right, let's look at Kansas Senate. Too early in that race.
Michigan's Senate race, too early to call there. That's another Democrat who some felt might be on the rope, so we'll watch that one. Minnesota's got a Senate race going. It is too early to call there.
Same story in New Mexico, too early. Texas, John Cornyn, the incumbent, will hold on to his seat. We project him as the winner.
And let's look at South Dakota. We are projecting that Mike Rounds, the senator, the incumbent, will go back to Congress. And here's how it's shaking out at this hour. That is the breakdown. Remember that Democrats would have to gain 3 seats if they win the White House to gain control of the majority, and 4 if the president is reelected. We'll keep our eye on that. We'll take a quick break. Stay with us. Much more as election night coverage continues right here on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. We've got a couple of new calls to make in the presidential race in Colorado. Biden is the projected winner. South Dakota, Trump, the projected winner.
Okay, so if you're keeping track at home, that's 1 apiece. Let's ring Garrett Haken. He's in Houston, Texas. Texas saw just an enormous outpouring of early vote. Garrett, what are we seeing now as the results are starting to come in?
Savannah, as those early votes are getting counted in the big cities, you're seeing Joe Biden build a bit of a firewall here in Harris County, in Dallas County, in Tarrant County. That's the Fort Worth area. That particular county is essentially tied, but big leads for Biden in Dallas County and Harris County, but perhaps not big enough. He's outperforming Hillary Clinton's margins in the state from 2016 significantly, but he's about on par with where Beto O'Rourke was in 2018 in a race that O'Rourke ended up losing by about 2.5 points. The other sign of concern for Democrats in the state, the Rio Grande Valley, traditionally Hispanic counties, places like McAllen, Texas, appear to be underperforming for Biden as to where Clinton was 4 years ago. The trick for Democrats here was always going to be run up the score in a major way in Harris County. Now with just the early votes in, Biden does have a firewall, but as these same-day votes start to come in, you just wonder if it's going to be enough for him to hold on in a state that was always a bit of a reach state for Democrats, but one where they felt a lot of demographic trends and people moving into the state might give them a shot at flipping this state for the first time in some 40 years. Savannah?
All right, Garrett, thank you. Interesting, though, to see that theme now in a different region of the country where the Latino vote is just not turning out for Joe Biden as he expected, at least so far.
Look, I'm going to take you to Georgia in a minute, but I do want to make a point about North Carolina that's very important. Remember what we were going to tell you about this? Look at, so 78% of the vote is in, right? That's a lot of vote. Remember what the orange means. The orange is the vote that took place before today, okay? The yellow is what is the vote that's coming in. And what we're waiting, basically, Biden's been sitting on his early vote lead. And what we're waiting to come in this last 21% of the vote in North Carolina is same-day vote. We know Trump won election day vote. The question is, did he win by enough to make up that margin? That's going to be how we're watching North Carolina over the next hour or so on there. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that and realize what vote is out. And it's election day vote right now that we have not seen that much of in North Carolina. Let me take you to Georgia. It's just starting to come in. Some of the rural counties come in for me. I'll just give you an example. Here we are here. This is where either Biden wins or loses this. This is the Atlanta suburbs, the monster region here, and you'll see we still only have 1% of the vote in DeKalb County. So we've got a long way to go. But I want you to watch a county here. This is the next county out. The closest red county to Atlanta these days. Trump narrowly carrying it, and you can just see 4 years ago he carried it by almost 20 points. And this is the question, and you see here, Romney carried it by 31 points over President Obama. So the question is, and it's the same story as Texas, right? How much of an advantage can Biden build out of Atlanta and its suburbs, and can he keep encroaching, keep finding some exurban counties like Fayette there that I'm telling you about, and then overcome that strong rural vote for Donald Trump? It's basically the same story almost in every one of these battlegrounds.
All right, Chuck, thank you. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back with more Decision 2020 election night coverage in just a moment.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Welcome back. During the break, some new calls. Let's look at North Dakota. And President Trump is the projected winner in North Dakota.
In Alabama, President Trump is the winner there. There's also a Senate race going on there. We'll check in with that in a few moments.
And looking at Florida once again, checking in there. It is too close to call, but Trump leads in Florida. And in Texas right now, too early to call.
Well, it's only been 25 minutes since the polls closed in Texas and Arizona, a couple of states that folks are going to be watching very, very closely. We'll continue to monitor it. We've got much more election coverage to come here on NBC. We'll be back in just a few. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus. The story. The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
It is almost 9:30 in the East. Let's show you where we are right now.
All right, Florida, too close to call, but the president is leading. A lot of the vote is in, so we anticipate a call coming up pretty soon. In Pennsylvania, it is too early to call, and that may well be a race that lasts 4 days.
Let's look at Texas. This is a place that Joe Biden has tried to turn blue. It is too early in Texas right now. Arizona, it is too early as well.
Let's take a look at Arizona, see how much vote is in at this hour. Too early to call. It doesn't look like they've reported any, but let's go to Michigan now. Too early to call there, but that is a battleground, one closely watched, one that Joe Biden has got to flip back to blue this year. North Carolina, too early to call. We've been watching it very closely. That's another one that the Democrats had hoped to flip.
We've been keeping a big eye on Ohio as well. 60% in their 18 electoral votes. That's too early to call right now. And Georgia as well. This is another state that Joe Biden has tried to add to an expanded map. Too early in Georgia.
The map's starting to fill out a little bit, but we've got the big remaining questions. I don't believe we've yet to call a battleground, Chuck. So
well, we haven't, and we certainly haven't seen a flip yet. But Florida looks like we have an idea where it's headed because we're telling you, we think Trump is leading here. We're at 80%. Let's look at how this is North Carolina. This to me is the next shoe to drop here. I think we see as the vote comes in. And as you can see, Joe Biden's margin is now less than 100,000, still 20%, still 1 million votes to go. Right now, the way that's eaten, let's see. It's these gray counties that we don't have anything in yet. And if you want an idea, this one next to Raleigh here, this is something that's expected to be a big Trump county. You know, this empty county here, Franklin's expected to be a Trump county. This one here, so you can see this is why there's pessimism on the Democratic side, optimism on the Republican side when it comes to where we are with North Carolina. And let me take you over to Georgia. Let's just get an update there to see. We're looking, this vote's trickling in here, 40%. We're still, until I see more than 1% out of DeKalb, we still got a long, long way to go in Georgia with the same game. But going back to North Carolina, that's what you're going to keep following. That should be the next shoe to drop, I think, before 11 o'clock.
All right.
All right. Let's turn to Andrea Mitchell right now. Talk a little bit about the expectations leading in tonight, the worries about Russia and Iran and meddling in our election. Any signs of any of that?
No signs of any cyber. There was a lot of misinformation leading up to the election, but no signs of any cyber hacking. But we've now learned from two sources that U.S. Cyber Command did take offensive military action against government-linked hackers in both Russia and Iran. It was described as, by official sources to us, as annoyances, not flushing blows, similar to what they did in the run-up to the 2018 midterms. We've seen no signs, as I say, of cyber hacking so far targeting this election from Russia or Iran. But they did take this action preemptively. Last time, they put them out of action for a couple of days, and then the government hackers were back in action again.
But the biggest worry seemed to be more influence campaigns as opposed to
and that
physical
we certainly saw plenty of signs of, and that they announced a couple of weeks ago, and they've been tracking it, Russia, Iran, and to a lesser degree, China.
All right, Andrea.
I believe we have a call in South Carolina to make in the presidential race. Again, an expected result. The president will take South Carolina. But let's stay on this subject of national security. We've got 4 former secretaries of Homeland Security joining us. Tom Ridge and Michael Chertoff, who served under President George W. Bush, and Janet Napolitano and Jay Johnson. They served under President Obama, and I had the pleasure of speaking to all of you last week. All of you had a concern that Americans feel reassured about the integrity of the election. I'll start with you, Secretary Chertoff. How are you feeling tonight about how the election has played out so far?
Well, I think some of the biggest concerns we had turned out not to have come to fruition. I think there was a big concern about violence that might interfere with people's ability to actually go to the polls on Election Day, or interference with the voting process, or even potentially government agents being present in a way that would be intimidating. And the reporting I've seen suggests that other than a few sporadic instances of potential voter intimidation, largely this has gone reasonably smoothly. So it looks, at least in terms of the issue of getting people to the polling places and getting them to vote, we've avoided any serious problems. Now, of course, we still have the question of the count and the result, and that could very well be on occasion foresee some more disruption.
That brings me to Secretary Ridge, who, by the way, hails from the great state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And when we talked earlier, Secretary Ridge, I think you said many, many times, November 3rd, today is the last day to cast your ballot. It is not the last day to count your ballot. Are you concerned that we may have a days-long, perhaps longer process in Pennsylvania before us?
Well, I think we're going to have a day or days-long process in several states. I know there are several states that didn't begin processing ballots until a day or two before the November 3rd. In Pennsylvania today didn't begin processing its ballots until 7 a.m. this morning. But frankly, I think we've demonstrated, and I follow up on my colleague, Secretary Chertoff, what we've seen today, I think, is a respectful presence of Republicans and Democrats at the polls, acting and respecting one another's expression of preference. I mean, we've had very few reports of fraud, very few reports of intimidation, in spite of all the polling anxiety, in some communities fear. I'll give you a perfect example. I decided to vote in person today, showed up at 6:45. By then, there were already 60 people in line. Some people had a MAGA hat on, a couple of people had Biden shirts on, but everybody was there, masked, social distancing, respecting each other's right to cast a vote. I think in considerable measure, it's a good news day for America. We respected each other so far, and I believe we will continue to respect the outcomes in 4 or 5 states who we may not know for a day or two.
Well, let's ask somebody who knows a little bit about that. Secretary Napolitano, you had a governor's race in Arizona that got stretched out a little longer than you probably would have preferred. What's your advice to folks who are watching, especially if we do have these states where it just comes down to the wire and it takes some time to count?
Yeah, that's right. In 2002, when I ran for governor in Arizona the first time, My opponent didn't concede for 6 days after the election, and we just had to be patient. I actually went to a spa in California and just got out of town for a couple of days.
Well, maybe that's some good advice for all of us.
Exactly. I'll use a little of that now. But I think the point is that today went well. It went well for America. It went well for our democracy. But now we need to be patient and let the states that are slower to count their votes so that everybody's right to vote is respected.
Secretary Johnson, what's on your mind tonight?
I agree with my colleagues. We're pleased that there weren't the problems we were concerned about at polling places. Andrea noted a few weeks ago the Iranians had attempted to intimidate voters. We do know that the Russians targeted a vast number of different sources of information. Our government does not know what they intend to do about that. But I think all of us are reassured by the strength of our democracy. You know, my son is in the Coast Guard. He's deployed overseas right now, and he voted online several thousand miles away. He really wanted to vote. He voted online, and today he got this postcard in the mail to our home in New Jersey. Your ballot has been received by the state of New Jersey. So I feel pretty good about that.
Well, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, 4 individuals who've served our country. Thank you for your time and for your care. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's worth noting we've not heard the word chaos much today. A lot of.
Nor have we seen it.
Nor have we seen it, obviously. Let's go to Hallie Jackson right now. Hallie, let's talk a little bit about North Carolina and how the president's campaign is looking at those numbers right now.
Yeah, they're looking at them in, I think, a positive light, Lester. I just got off the phone with one source close to the campaign who's talking about how they believe that North Carolina could be potentially a good thing for them. It is going to be tighter than in 2016. Back in 2016, President Trump won by about 3.5 points in that state. Right now, the returns do show, as we're looking at the numbers here, I'm looking at the percentage, 80% of the vote in. The key thing is something that we have been talking about a couple of times tonight, those counties up there near Wake County by the Raleigh-Durham metro area where the vote still is not in. So those are some of the things that I think the Trump team is looking at, but they are feeling, I think, more positive about North Carolina. That was a state that they'd been optimistic about, but not necessarily slam dunk confident the way that they entered the night thinking about as it relates to Florida, for example. So still lots to watch in North Carolina. I will say, as it relates to Florida, I think there is a sense now from folks I've talked to in the last hour or so that they are looking or hoping to do some attempted extrapolation from where they performed well in Florida to see if that is going to extend it to some of these other key states like Ohio, like Georgia. Those are the other 2 that I'm hearing a lot about tonight, Lester.
All right. Thank you, Hallie.
Let's go to North Carolina because we are watching to see what happens there. She's in Morgan Radford is in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's one of the places where the suburban vote could be key for Joe Biden. But Morgan, right now we're waiting for the day of vote, which could break for Trump.
That's right, Savannah. We are at the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections, and this is actually where those physical ballots are now being reported from the precincts and being counted. I want to show you how it's working here on the ground because this is where the action is happening. They're bringing in these large blue bins, and in those bins there are 2 important things. There's one, the physical ballots, and I'll show you where those are being stored and sorted inside here on the right. But there's a second thing that's important. There are little USB chips, and over here to my left, that's where they're being counted. So the precincts are actually have their tabulations that are being counted in a computer that is not set up to the internet. But what's fascinating is that we've been talking all week about how this is a state that the Democrats have been aggressively trying to flip and turn blue. And so what they're focusing on inside those blue bins is to see just how blue those ballots are inside. They're focusing, one, on the suburbs. Hallie mentioned a few of the key suburbs here. How are those suburban voters going to vote? But secondly, they're looking at unaffiliated voters. When we spoke to state party officials from both sides, they said that north of 100,000 new registered voters registered as Democrats, registered as Republicans since 2016, but more than 400,000 new registered voters are unaffiliated. So the question is, what will be inside those boxes tonight?
Yeah, Chuck, what does it look like, North Carolina? How much vote is outstanding?
Well, we still have 20% of the vote outstanding. And I remember how I began the night with you guys, and I said, hey, I want to take you back to 2012. And even though this was when Barack Obama narrowly lost North Carolina, there was a lot of blue here on the border of South Carolina. These are some rural African-American counties. Now, let me show you what's going on. I told you this was going to be one of the keys. The good news for Joe Biden, he's blowing the doors off in these suburban counties. We showed you Charlotte. We showed you Raleigh. Remember I told you about Richmond, and I told you about Robeson. Where's Robeson County here? Right there. I told you about this one, African-American county. Look at Trump's number. He's got to be overperforming somewhere, right? If in order to make up that ground. Well, we found where he's overperforming. Number one, this was an important Obama county. These are some rural African-American voters not turning out. That's what this says, not turning out. Maybe they showed up on Election Day, and we shall see, but there's not a lot of vote left here. So when you're looking to see where the president overperformed in order to make up for these losses, that they're worse in Wake County, worse in Mecklenburg, Wilson, Guilford. He's making it up, it looks like, in some of these border counties in South Carolina in particular. But this has to be a bit distressing, that rural African-American vote is not showing up the way it showed up for Barack Obama.
All right, Chuck, thank you. And we want to check in with Texas. It's still too early to call, but we are showing that the president is leading with approximately 74% of the vote in. We'll take a quick break here. More election night coverage when we continue Decision 2020 on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds standing these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Senator Cory Gardner is going back to Colorado, and former Governor John Hickenlooper, the Democrat, will pick up that seat. So that's one more in the Democrats' column in their race to try to regain control of the United States Senate.
All right, we want to bring in right now Democratic Senator and former presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Thank you for being with us. What do you see this evening that tells you where we're going, Senator?
I see in the next hour or so you're going to have a lot of focus on the Midwest and the West. Big news to you. Just kidding. I think what you see is what we've known all along, and that is that these critical states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are going to be where it's at. And Joe Biden had to win these states from the beginning. I still think North Carolina is because of the Senate race there as well. I've been talking about North Carolina for days. And then as we head west, we've got Arizona and Nevada and many other places. And I think one of the messages of the night is suburban women, and that Joe Biden is doing better than a lot of people predicted in the suburbs. I think a lot of that is the president's attitude and how he's divided people, whereas Biden has said, look, I'm going to be the president for all of America. Red, blue, I don't care. I don't care if you voted for me, if you didn't, I'm going to be your president. Really important in the Midwest.
So you think this thing's moving to the Midwest. How does that blue wall look tonight?
It's looking pretty strong. The fact that we are so competitive in Ohio and doing so well in like the Cincinnati suburbs, the fact that Iowa is still in play, but it's mostly, as you know, those two states of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, it's going to take a while to get their votes counted. They just started today, and I think your viewers know that, but they've got to remember that, whereas Minnesota and Michigan may be coming in sooner. And so it's going to be a lot about that. The fact that we've got 4 Democratic governors in those states that have been having to bear the brunt of leading through the coronavirus. People know that in our states, whereas the president has shoved everything down to these governors. You've got a lot of things going on where these states have changed politically since 2016.
Senator, you've mentioned the blue wall. You've said it's going to stay strong, but of course you would have liked to have some cushion. Are you disappointed that so far, at least, the Sun Belt is not turning into a blue wave as some had hoped it might for Joe Biden, at least one of them?
Well, we always know Florida is not an easy state. You didn't have a Senate race going on in that state. And the point is that from the very beginning, from the moment that Joe Biden announced, he has been focused on these Midwestern states. I know because I debated him, ran against him, did my Blue Wall tour, and one of the reasons that I endorsed him was that I felt that he would see the importance of these states where people felt left behind over the last decade. Donald Trump's policies, whether it's on trade, whether it's on manufacturing, have left a lot of people behind, and that's even before the pandemic started.
Real quick, Senator Klobuchar, let's talk about your home state of Minnesota, because Republicans had hoped to make it competitive. They have visited there. It was close in 2016. Hillary Clinton only won it by 1.6%. You feel good about Minnesota going blue for Biden tonight?
I do. We have really a strong statewide campaign. We've all hung together. We've got some key congressional races that I hope at some point you guys will get to. Tina Smith is doing well. I predict she will win. And we've had a huge voter turnout, despite some efforts by the Republicans at the last minute to stop votes from being counted. So we feel good about our state.
All right. Thank you, Senator Amy Klobuchar. I appreciate it very much.
All right, Andrea Mitchell is here. You know, that's a part of the country where the president really tried to hammer home this message of law and order and take back the streets and Antifa. Right. How did that go? What's the exit polling tell us?
The exit polling is telling us that it did not take the suburban white women. Overwhelmingly, their most important issue was the economy, and more than half believe that Black Lives Matter is a good thing, had a positive attitude toward Black Lives Matter. Nearly half believe that there is racial inequality in the justice system. So that whole law and order appeal after the demonstrations and the protests, some of which did turn violent, did not take hold in that appeal to suburban white women voters.
All right, Andrea, thanks very much. We've got some Senate calls, or at least some characterizations to show you. South Carolina, this is Lindsey Graham who's faced an onslaught of money from the Harrison camp, but too early to call. Graham leads right now there.
All right, let's go to Nebraska, where NBC projects Ben Sass, the incumbent, is headed back to Congress rather handily. We'll also keep an eye on that one congressional district in Nebraska that often flips, and we'll see how that is going in a few moments.
We'll take a break here. Be back with more Decision 2020 election night coverage after this.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Donald Trump leading in Florida right now. A lot of focus there has been and is now on Latino voters. And Andrea Mitchell has some insight on that.
Well, the Latino vote had been shifting in 2012, 2016, going away from the Republicans, where those folks had long been, towards Democrats. It has shifted back by 10 points. And Donald Trump is getting in the exit polls 45% of the Latino vote in Florida. We're talking now about Florida. We're talking about Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans. And that really is the foreign policy of this administration. Secretary Pompeo, been hammering that home. The president has been really disciplined in his message on Joe Biden being a socialist, a false claim, but that really has borne fruit. They were, as we've been pointing out in Miami-Dade in particular, slow to canvass, and it was because of COVID. But that caution on COVID has cost Joe Biden a lot in Florida.
All right, let's pick up on that with Chuck Todd, who is at the map.
I am. I'm just looking here at North Carolina for everybody here. As you can see, the Biden lead is down to just 29,000, 84% in. And as you can see, we're still waiting for a lot more of our yellow, and yellow is same-day vote. And again, I will go back to the same area. Basically, the issue is going to be there is some vote in these big blue counties still. There's 17% of vote left in Wake. Guilford, there's 18%. So there's some Biden counties where there's votes out. But if you look here, there's still, this is going to be a Trump county, that's going to be a Trump county. So this still looks like a nail-biter in North Carolina, but I understand why the Trump people feel good.
All right, Chuck, thanks very much. We'll be back with poll closings in 4 more states at the top of the hour, including battlegrounds Iowa and Nevada. But first, you're watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
from every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
and in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
About a minute before 10 o'clock here in the East, and we've got Iowa, Montana, Nevada, and Utah about to see their polls close in under 50 seconds. We'll have some characterizations for you in a minute, but here's where we stand right now.
Okay, Florida, too close to call, but the president is leading 93% of the vote in there. In Texas, we are characterizing it as a Trump lead, though it is too early to call at this hour.
New Hampshire, too early. Biden is leading in New Hampshire right now. In North Carolina, it is too early to make the call. Ohio, also too early.
Georgia, lots to watch there. Too early to call. Votes are still coming in there. In Virginia, former battleground Vice President Biden is leading, but it is too early to make an official call there. And in Wisconsin, it is far too early to call. They have a lot of votes to count there.
And Pennsylvania, it's too early to call. Minnesota, too early. Same story in Maine. And Arizona, which I don't think we've seen any vote come out of Arizona.
Yeah, there's Maine and Arizona, which the polls closed about an hour ago. 85% of the voting is by mail in Arizona, and they are allowed to tabulate and count well before Election Day. But we await the great state of Arizona, my home state, and let's look at Kansas. Too early to call, but as expected, the president is leading. Now we've got some calls to make here at 10 o'clock. Iowa.
Iowa, first off, is too early. Nevada, too early.
Let's see what's going on in Montana. Not only do they have, of course, the presidential race, but a pretty competitive governor's race. Too early to call. Polls just closing there, and in Utah as well. Too early to call.
Let's look at the road to 270, the map, and show you where things break down right now. And right now, Biden with 89 electoral votes, Trump 72 on the road to 270.
Everybody kind of holding on to the states they were expected to hold on to. We haven't had any shockers yet, any flips. We do have something to report in the Georgia Senate race. There's actually 2 Senate races, and this one will advance to a runoff. Raphael Warnock there, the Democrat, having sufficient votes. We're projecting to get to that runoff, which will be held in early January. Chuck.
Right, and the question's going to be which one of Loeffler or Collins joins Warnock in there. By the way, a little nugget on Virginia that Mark Murray just learned. Virginia is the exact opposite. They've been only doing Election Day vote. They're going to count their early vote starting at 11 p.m. So if you're wondering what's going on with Virginia, that will tell you about Virginia. Texas, you noted why is Trump ahead? Well, I can give you one. I can get you one reason why he is. I'm going to take you to those Trump 2018 counties. These were counties that both Beto O'Rourke in that Senate race against Ted Cruz, where he made us think maybe Texas is a battleground state. I want to show you around the Austin media market here. Austin, Travis County is a huge, big Democratic center. So these 2 adjacent counties here, Beto won them both. But I want to take you to Hayes here, number 1. Biden's winning it by 12. Beto won it by 16. Again, Beto O'Rourke lost the state. But the point is, and this was something Casey Hunt was learning from her sources, that there appears to be that Biden, while doing pretty well, is underperforming, particularly in the Austin media market. And this shows you right here. It's another reason why I've classified Trump as leading. And by the way, speaking of leading, I want to quickly, one place we want to take you is Ohio, and we've been showing you, remember Biden had the early lead. Well, the Republican vote is starting to come in. As you can see, the county map's getting redder, and the president now has a lead of about 100,000. You can see what we're seeing here, the early absentee. So right now we have a lot more Election Day vote. There's still some early vote to count. So we've got a long way to go in Ohio. We know it's about a 50-50 split, the early vote, which we know favors Biden, the Election Day vote, which favors Trump. So watch for our orange and yellow lines here to see if they become 50-50. But the yellow, anytime you see yellow, that's usually a pretty good sign for President Trump.
All right, let's bring in Kristen Welker now. She is at Biden headquarters. How are they feeling about the numbers and what we're seeing here?
Well, Lester, with Florida looking increasingly out of reach, of course, they are focused on North Carolina and on Georgia. One campaign official acknowledging that both of those states look very close. But this official telling me we still feel good. We still feel like we have a shot there. So they are focused on those 2 states. And then, of course, the Midwest, their blue wall. That is where they think that ultimately Vice President Biden will prevail. They are very interested in what they're seeing in Ohio. I've been talking to a number of officials in and out of the campaign, including to Democrats in Ohio, with one telling me that the turnout in some of those Democratic strongholds has been quite strong. And then in some of the swing counties, it looks like Biden is outperforming expectations. Why is that significant? Even if Biden doesn't carry Ohio, they believe it could have implications for the all-important battleground state of Pennsylvania. And that is really where we began this discussion tonight. Why has Biden spent so much time in Pennsylvania over the past several weeks throughout the course of this campaign? Because ultimately it could be make or break for Joe Biden with its electoral votes. That's why he was there today in Scranton and in Philadelphia, urging voters to turn out. Of course, back in 2016, the Obama coalition underperformed, and that's why Hillary Clinton fell short there. So he is trying to win that state back, and without Pennsylvania, very difficult for President Trump to return to the White House. So it is a critical state for him as well. Guys.
All right, Kristen, thank you. And that brings us to Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Jason, it's good to have you with us. So far, it looks like the president is performing well in the states he has to win. He does have to contend with the so-called blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. How are you feeling about that?
Savannah, good evening. Feeling very, very good. I think Florida is a state that the president is definitely going to carry. Feel good about where we are with Georgia. We also feel good about North Carolina. I think we're going to win by somewhere between 50 and 70,000 votes. Also, when you take a look at some of the rural counties in Indiana, the way that we're performing with those small towns that are about 5,000 or less people, some of that can be extrapolated out and compared to, say, Wisconsin, Michigan. Looking at some of the rural areas, you look at Kent County in Michigan, for example, where we're increasing. So states where we have, or excuse me, counties where we have 75% or more of the vote in so far, we're increasing our margins in Michigan by between 6 and 7%. And I think that one of the big surprises, the two big surprises I think so far. Number one, I think President Trump is going to win Minnesota tonight. You look at the way the data is trending. We feel very good about that state. That's going to be a big shock to Biden and I think to a lot of folks since we haven't won that since 1972. But the biggest story of the night so far, Black voters and Latino voters helping to power President Trump forward, and I think will be the big difference in him being reelected tonight.
I know everything seems positive, but tell me the kind of thing that you started this evening wringing your hands over that still sits out there that you worry about.
Well, fundamentally, keep in mind that Democrats knew that they were going to have this early vote, the absentee votes. And so we actually saw a lot of those early votes the same way that the Democrats did. What we thought, though, was different is that we would have this red wave, folks who would actually show up on Election Day. And the Democrats essentially had already cannibalized all of their votes. People who are likely Democratic primary voters who were going to vote, and people who wanted to vote against President Trump basically did that right at the beginning of the early vote period. So we feel, so we're kind of concerned a little bit about that, but it looks like our models, our predictions for the turnout are looking to be right on track. And Democrats basically shot their wad in the early vote. They just don't have it right now, and that's the difference in the enthusiasm factor.
You ready
our
to
folks are going to show up on Election Day. Theirs aren't.
Are you ready to claim North Carolina on your map?
I think that we will win by between 50 and 70,000 votes. So that's where we're tracking. All of the counties that are outstanding are counties that the president won in 2016. And so if you, again, we're past the polling aspect. I think one of the stories for tonight is that polling is broken. Polling is like Humpty Dumpty. It's smashed into 1,000 pieces. But when you look at the actual votes that are in and our modeling for where we're going, we're going to win North Carolina.
Jason Miller, thank you for coming on.
All right, let's turn to Chuck real quick. Polling is broken. You just heard it from Jason Miller. He said it's like Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall. Are you ready to declare that verdict?
I got my issues with some state polling, that's for sure. I mean, I think there is definitely an issue in that there's just no quality control with a lot of some of these pollsters you've never heard of and things like this. There's no doubt. We're finally starting to get some Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah, see, you wanted to hear some Arizona? By the way, they did the big dump. I told you that's what they do. We went from 0 to 69%, okay? Just to give you an estimate here, as you see, there's a significant chunk. They're doing what they said they'd do. They said they'd be able to handle both their early vote and some of their same-day vote. They'd be processing it together. And as you can see, we got a big chunk of it already out. And Biden has a good lead here. Savannah, as you know, you could argue that it's a one-county election. Because Maricopa, one instance in the last decade where some statewide candidate lost Maricopa County, which is home of Phoenix, arguably the largest suburb in America, and somehow won statewide, but that person lost about like 1,000 votes. So as you see here, a 10-point lead right now in Maricopa with 77% in. And just so you can see, Donald Trump carried Maricopa. Mitt Romney carried Maricopa. John McCain carried Maricopa. Obviously, he was an Arizona native. So, look.
How much of Maricopa County's in? 77%?
Okay. So, this is a good chunk. This is a big lead. Look, they needed something in the Sun Belt right now. I know the Biden folks are feeling a bit antsy. North Carolina's making them antsy. Georgia, we still got a lot of vote for that to come in. We know Florida appears to be gone. I know we haven't officially called that yet. So, early on right now, and it's a lot of vote in, Arizona looks like it may actually make pollsters feel better.
Let's turn to Casey on that. I am from Arizona, so I know that, yes, while Maricopa County and Pima County are important, so are all the other counties, and they're largely red counties. What are you hearing, Casey?
Well, Savannah, my sources are saying that they expect, and Chuck touched on this, to have a little bit of a roller coaster here in terms of counting, that it'll look good initially for Joe Biden, that then we may see them start to count some votes that may turn this toward Trump, and then there could be another batch that'll swing us back again. So my sources are urging patience on that front. But I will also say that there does seem to be a difference between how Mark Kelly, who's the Senate candidate in this race, the Democrat, is doing versus how Joe Biden is doing. My Republican and Democratic sources are expecting that Kelly's going to do better than Joe Biden. And I think the big question mark right now is what is the impact of the Hispanic vote in Arizona? We obviously have talked a lot about the unique qualities of the Cuban American community, the Venezuelan American community in Miami-Dade. Remember, of course, we've talked at length about how that really swung for President Trump. But Democrats think that that swing was big enough. They're nervous that it could replicate itself with other Hispanic communities. They've seen a little bit of it in Texas, and they're concerned about it in Arizona in the context of the presidential race. So I'm watching to see in Arizona if we actually get a split result here, if we see a Democrat win the Senate seat and potentially see President Trump carry the state at the presidential level. Savannah.
All right. Well, they have spent a lot of time, the president's campaign has spent a lot of time in Arizona over the years. We've got a new call to tell you about. It is too early to call in Ohio, but we are characterizing it a bit more, saying that the president is leading. Let's go to David Plouffe and Mike Murphy, two strategists, one Democrat, one Republican. So we've got the whole campaign covered here, although I will say Mike Murphy, Republican, who does not support Donald Trump. Mike, what are you seeing? What is giving you pause tonight?
Well, I think the Democrats wanted a quick knockout in the Sun Belt, particularly in Florida, perhaps in North Carolina or Georgia. And we have to wait on North Carolina or Georgia. But Florida's interesting, even though it looks like Donald Trump is going to be president for life of Miami-Dade County, which is what bailed him out in Florida. Biden did very well switching some swing counties there, which is a good sign, I think, for Arizona. And what I'm seeing in Ohio, which is a tight race with Biden in the hunt in a lean Republican state, is a very good sign for Michigan and Wisconsin and Western Pennsylvania. There's no Miami-Dade County in Michigan, Wisconsin, or Western Pennsylvania. So we just got to wait and count it, and it's going to take a while. But the quick knockout, that's just not going to happen tonight.
David, has there been too much reliance going down the stretch on this Sun Belt strategy, and are the paths now considerably more narrow, or appear to be more narrow for Biden?
Well, I think the Biden campaign is focused like a laser on Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. You had some other states come into play. Look, North Carolina is going to be very close. I think you're going to see a lot of votes still coming in the Atlanta area. That's going to make Georgia close. Arizona, I imagine that will tighten, but the 70% that's in looks good for Biden. So I think Arizona is crucial, obviously. And then I agree with Mike. I look at Ohio. It would be nice to win it, but that was a long shot. What does it tell you about Western Pennsylvania, about parts of Michigan and Wisconsin? And so, yes, this is not going to be an early night. It's not going to be electoral college landslide. But until you show me numbers that suggest that Donald Trump now is the favorite in Arizona or Pennsylvania, I think Joe Biden still maintains the best route to 270. And the question in Arizona is some of the weakness we see in the Rio Grande Valley, and then certainly in Miami-Dade with Hispanic voters. Does any of that carry over to Arizona? And when we really unpack the precincts, we'll get a sense of that.
All right, David and Mike, gentlemen, thanks very much. Before we pause for a quick break, an update from North Carolina's governor's race. And the incumbent, Cooper, will win. Will continue to be governor.
All right, and in New Mexico, we've got Joe Biden prevailing in that state. It'll pick up New Mexico's 5 electoral votes. We're back right after this. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, We're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
As we learn a bit more, the plot thickens. Let's show you what's happening now in North Carolina. That's moved to the too close to call category. Too close to call.
All right, and let's go to Arizona, which just unloaded a bunch of votes, and we are saying it's too early to call, but Vice President Biden does have a lead in Arizona at this hour, which brings us to Chuck Todd and his maps.
Yeah, let's take a look at what we're looking at Arizona, and the numbers coming in very quickly, and as you can see, this is why we have him leading. He's got a 9-point lead. Look, he's got a 200,000 vote advantage, and we expect there's 800,000 votes left. That's a lot. Look at how quickly these numbers start to update themselves. The point is that he's got to make up 200,000. There's 800,000 left. You can do that math, but Trump's got to he's got to win a big chunk of the remaining vote to pull this off, which is why we classify that as Biden leading. And just go back to Maricopa. It's a 9-point. It's a 9-point gap. That's not something you can make up. Hope in the rural counties.
What about in Tucson, my hometown? Did he run up the score? No, that's
80%. And let's see how Biden did compared to Clinton. Look at that. Right now he's running 9 points ahead of her. She won it because it's always a Democratic county. It usually is a Democratic-leaning county. But look, if we were seeing this Latino vote helping Trump, it would show up in Pima County, and we're not seeing that there. And so this is a reminder that it doesn't, again, not all Latino votes are the same when you're trying to compare them, particularly if you're in the Southeast versus the Southwest. So, look, Arizona, this is the first Sun Belt state that you sit there and you're like, okay, and there's not a lot of rural remaining vote that you sit there and say, okay, we're going to see the same thing that we've seen with Trump in Ohio and North Carolina, that as that rural vote comes in, it starts to load up. Let's take a look at North Carolina. Remember, I told you, I said, one of the things you're going to see, we're going to get at least straggling rural counties that will add to his number, but that there was still some room to grow in the big blue counties. There's still a lot of vote in Wake County, 16% of the vote. This is that's a lot of voters that are left, and this has obviously been a huge Biden county. You look at Mecklenburg, not much left there, obviously, just 94% are in. Guilford, this is Greensboro, still a decent chunk of vote here. And then everywhere, Trump's strength is like a little bit everywhere. And that's the thing. You go, and I go back, I'll tell you, this rural African-American turnout is just such and I just want to just show you here where Trump is overperforming Robeson County. This is where he is able, he's adding to his numbers. We don't see this in some of these places.
Is that African-American voters not turning out?
This is not turning out.
Or because the president has made an effort to attract African-Americans?
Look, we're not seeing enough evidence there. This to me looks more like not turning out.
Okay.
On that front than it does anything else. Because you look, it's basically Biden's number and Clinton's number. They're not that different, 95% in. So you've seen in other places where there's some huge Biden overperformance here. These border counties along South Carolina are going to be, if Biden comes up short, I would argue that's where he's going to find the votes that he should have gotten in order to get this, in order to make North Carolina happen.
Okay.
Yeah, Minnesota. Let me quickly ask you about Minnesota. Jason Miller came on and suggested that the Trump folks feel good about Minnesota.
Look, they talk. We'll see. I mean, we only have about a third of the vote in, and just so you see, this is election day vote. So it's, let's look at some of the big. I mean, look, if Biden's got a big lead right now because Hennepin County, that's Minneapolis, and we've got most of the vote in. So, yeah, as the rural counties come in, this state's likely to get closer. It was a 3-point race last time. We'll see. Okay, we'll see. I've always been a bit of a skeptic for the Trump campaign to get over the top in Minnesota. But again, it does. Minnesota's a state that is certainly trending long term towards the Republicans.
Yeah, and the Trump campaign certainly visited Minnesota many times and made an effort there. We've had two tales of that. Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota said the Democrats will hold. Jason Miller of the Trump campaign says
all in the same half hour.
There's an important Democratic Senate seat there.
Yes, there is. So we'll check in, and there's a lot of Senate races. In fact, a hot one out in Montana, Andrew was just reminding me of. We'll check in on that one as well. Take a break right here. We continue with our Decision 2020 election night coverage right after this break.
Ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
As we come back from a break, a new call to make. This in the House of Representatives. NBC News projects that Democrats will maintain control of the House of Representatives.
All 435 seats in Congress up for grabs on the House side. And so Nancy Pelosi, Andrea, will remain House Speaker.
But we don't know by what margin. She said she's going to run again, and the progressives may make a run at it if it's a narrower margin, but she will retain control. She says she wants to be Speaker again.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. Much more election coverage ahead. Stay with us. You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. 10:30 in East, 7:30 out west. Louisiana's votes are in. NBC News is projecting Trump as the winner there. In Kansas, the president holds on and holds the state of Kansas. There's also a Senate race going on there.
In New Hampshire, it looks like Joe Biden will win. We project him as the winner. Florida in that race, too close. Trump leads, but that race still too close. Watching it very carefully.
Same story in Texas. It's too early to call, but the president does have a lead there, and North Carolina is getting just a little bit more interesting. It is too close to call there, and we've been watching that one real closely tonight.
Ohio would be bonus category, and right now it's too early to call. Too early in the Georgia presidential contest as well.
All right, let's keep it going. Here we go in Virginia. Too early to call, but Vice President Biden does have a lead there. In Wisconsin, we could call it way too early to call. They still are counting votes there.
Pennsylvania, they'll be counting them for a while. Too early in Pennsylvania. Minnesota, which we were discussing a few moments ago, that's too early as well.
All right, let's go to Maine, which divides its electoral votes by congressional district. We're calling that too early to call, but we did see a split decision in 2016 with Donald Trump picking up one electoral vote there. We'll see what happens. And Arizona, too early to call. The vote is coming in fast and furious. Vice President Biden with a lead there in Arizona at this hour.
Let's take a look at Iowa right now. Too early to call. Nevada is too early as well.
All right, Montana, too early to call. We'll keep an eye on that race, and hope to give you some Senate races in a moment here as well. And in Utah, as expected, President Trump wins. So that brings us to 270.
So let's add them all up, and here's where they stand right now. Biden leading 98-92 on that road to 270.
Let's go to Chuck, and see, I knew it. You were looking at North Carolina again.
I think we got it right now. 89% in, 42,000 votes. But what does that 89% translate to? 641,000 estimated votes still to count. So that's not an unreasonable a deficit to make up. The question is there going to be enough vote in different places? So first you try these blue counties here. This is Asheville, 92% in, so stragglers. Guilford still sitting at 84%. This could be a decent chunk of vote for Biden. Charlotte, here, Mecklenburg County, as I showed you before, not too much. Let's see what Wake looks like. We still haven't seen some Wake numbers. So I have a feeling now, North Carolina, I think the last time I said, we might finally see some action. Yeah, we're going to see action. It's called, we're not going to call that race tonight. Like, it looks more and more like North Carolina is one of those that you're going to have to wait to see all the vote coming in, because it does seem as if there's enough in different red and blue areas to make you think that thing is going to be very, very tight. However, the Democratic Senate candidate, Cal Cunningham, is underperforming Biden. So I would just say, while Biden may have a chance there, it looks a little tougher there for Cal Cunningham. Looks probably a little better for Tom Tillis. 75% in. I just want to keep track here in Arizona as we keep going. We think about 800,000 vote remains. This is a ton to make up. This is almost like a 2-to-1 that he's got to make up. This is very tough. Arizona, the first, could be the first state we're dealing with that looks like a state that might actually flip from 2016. Long way to go. Obviously, we want to wait for more of that vote in. But that's the first one of the Sun Belt. And it's been the one that Biden consistently led in the polls in, probably more so than any of these other Sun Belt states.
How much is that driven by the Senate race there?
Well, look, is it driven by the Senate race? Is it driven by what's been happening over 4 years? I mean, certainly Mark Kelly, ultimately, I think this is about Democrats just realizing that there's opportunity in Maricopa with these suburban. In the same way we saw basically the Denver suburbs take Colorado from a red to purple to blue, the Northern Virginia suburbs, and turned it from, it was red when I first moved there in the early 90s, to purple to blue. That's what both in Arizona and Georgia, that Democrats think, Maricopa and Phoenix, they think that's the key to turning Arizona blue, and of course the Atlanta suburbs. So the question is, are Phoenix and Atlanta ready to join Denver and the Washington, D.C. suburbs? And that's what we're going to find out tonight.
Perhaps tonight we'll have the answer for us. Hallie Jackson's over at the White House. What have you been hearing from your sources inside the Trump campaign?
Let me jump off of something that Chuck was just talking about as it relates specifically to Georgia, because the characterization from one person that I spoke with tonight is that folks are not feeling panicked yet. They're looking at Georgia. They are perhaps not feeling as good as they had been earlier in the day about it. But at this point, that is when they're watching, because of specifically what Chuck was talking about there. The suburbs moves around Atlanta, the way that the president could perform. They're specifically looking, and you heard Jason Miller talking about, for example, black and Hispanic voters in Georgia. They're specifically looking at the performance that the president will have among black voters there. So that's something that they're keeping an eye on. There is a lot of, again, we have not called Florida yet here at NBC News, but there is some, I would say, preemptive dunking from members of the Trump campaign about that state. There is really a sense that I'm starting to pick up from talking to folks tonight that this is a little bit how it went in the early hours of election night 4 years ago, if you remember, feeling like the polls were wrong, feeling like they were the underdog campaign that was able to come from behind and win 4 years ago. And there are people, listen, the president has surrounded himself this year with this same sort of cast and crew that he did 4 years ago in large part. So there are a lot of people who are holding on to that memory and wondering if tonight is going to end up having the same result for President Trump. When you talk about the mood sort of more broadly, the president is spending election night here at the White House. Listen, any other election night, I would be standing here in front of you from, the election night watch party, if you will. We're not doing that tonight because of, obviously, the pandemic. Things have changed quite dramatically over the last 9 months or so. There are about 250 people, according to one attendee, inside the White House right now, inside the East Room. They're watching one of the cable networks, the president's preferred channel, frankly, at least most of the time, which is Fox News. They're watching that on the big screens, cheering when some of the races get called there, having some snacks. Members of the Trump cabinet are there, members of the Trump family as well. And right now, the sort of energy in the room, we're told, is very positive based on some of the things that we're seeing. Now, might that change as we start to get in more vote from Arizona? That is definitely one that we're drilling down on with sources tonight. That was one of the states that the folks that I've been talking to in the Trump orbit hadn't been feeling very, very confident about. They were feeling what I would say hopeful, optimistic, but not extremely confident. And there now seems to be perhaps some reason for that we're seeing in the numbers that have come in, at least so far tonight.
All right, Hallie, thanks. Let's go over to Kristen Welker at Biden headquarters. How are they interpreting all this?
Well, the focus right now is on the Midwest, Lester, and I can tell you that they are watching what's happening in Ohio very closely. They say, look, if Biden can't pull out a surprise win there, it could have implications for the other Midwestern blue wall states that Vice President Biden has fought so hard to try to win and to try to win back from the Republicans in 2016. So they are particularly encouraged by the fact that there's been a strong turnout in key parts of Ohio, suburban areas. One of those key areas that they're looking at, Cuyahoga County, of course, that's the area around Columbus. They're also looking at another area that Mitt Romney and Donald Trump won back in 2016. That's Delaware County. Biden has got that to within about 5 points. So they say, look, he's outperforming expectations. They are encouraged by that. But this underscores, again, the fact that they're saying even if he doesn't pull out a win in Ohio, it could have implications for a state like Pennsylvania, where, of course, Vice President Biden has spent so much time over the past several days. And it could have implications for other Midwestern states, Michigan, Wisconsin. Of course, Biden has made multiple trips to those key states in the closing week of this campaign. One important note about Pennsylvania that it might be worth reiterating. Remember, Pennsylvania does not start to count its mail-in vote until today. And so state officials there have been urging patience and essentially saying, look, we feel confident we can get all of the votes counted by Friday in the coming days, but they're not going to have all of those votes counted by the end of tonight. So you could have a scenario where, for example, President Trump is up and then it starts to tighten. So that is what they are looking at. That blue wall they are hoping will hold for them.
Yeah, in fact, Pennsylvania can't start counting its mail-in votes until polls close, so not until tonight, and they can accept ballots as long as they're postmarked by Election Day up to Friday, so it could be a long one in Pennsylvania. Let's go over to Kelly O'Donnell. She's in Columbus, Ohio for us. Kelly, there's a lot of back and forth. Biden seeing some sweet spots in Ohio, but the Trump campaign feeling very positive that they're going to hold on to Ohio.
Exactly, Savannah. And talking with senior elected Democrats, they do see some hopeful signs in a couple of the key counties that Chuck has been talking about that had gone for Republicans that they believe are trending toward Joe Biden. And you're looking there at educated women voters, more affluent voters. One of the stories of Ohio is how the story of who the Ohio voter is changing for both parties. You have some of the more working class, traditionally Union or Democratic voters in times gone by that are now more in the Trump mold. And what the Trump campaign has tried to do in Ohio, as they have in other key battleground states, is to identify people who fit their type of voter profile, but who have not been casting ballots in years past, to squeeze out new votes among those types of voters in rural areas and in some of the exurbs. And that's where they see some confidence. In talking to a senior Republican in Ohio who's been looking county by county, and you know, when you speak to other elected officials, they know the map in ways from their own races that lay people certainly can't fully appreciate.
Let me interrupt you.
Looking at it.
Let me interrupt you here, because I believe we've got some Missouri. Oh. Okay, Donald Trump, the projected winner in Missouri. That's brand new. Chuck?
Well, look, Missouri at one time used to be a swing state. It wasn't that long ago, but it's just not enough. This has become a very much more the rural numbers just start to produce. But I want to go back to Ohio and just button up Ohio here a little bit. It does look like Donald Trump is on his way to winning. And remember, I told you it's all about the lake here. I know that's black on the board, but I swear to God, the water is blue on there. And I told you about these Democratic counties from 2018. 2018, a pretty good Democratic year overall. So let's look at the Trump Dem counties. And as you can see, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counties that Sherrod Brown, the Democratic senator who won re-election in Ohio in 2018, carried. And as you can see here, this was going to start with Biden needed to carry these, and they're just not happening. Erie County, I told you, Erie to Erie, this was an important one. Sherrod Brown carried it. Joe Biden trying to be the same type of Democrat didn't happen. You look over here in Ottawa, it's close, and it still be. There's more time. There's a lot more vote out there that could end up making that. But you see, this generally is the problem. Look at Ashtabula County. This was one Trump won big. And he's winning it bigger this time. So there is some evidence, and it's something Jason Miller brought up, that in some of these Midwestern rural counties, they are bringing out some more vote. So we shall see. You know, one other thing.
Just quickly, I want to go back to the board here, because I think we've got a call.
Another call.
In Illinois here.
Okay.
Joe Biden is the projected winner in Illinois. That's 20 electoral votes in his column. Chuck?
But I wanted to go back. You know, this, if I were to show the most, if you're the Biden folks and you're wondering, boy, why didn't they pull off Ohio? Delaware County was one of the swing counties we were watching. This was one he won big the last time, but you know, this was one we were seeing. Is it going to go all the way blue? And it doesn't look like it's going to go all the way blue. But you see here, this is one of those suburban counties. So this is why David Plouffe is saying, hey, I'm liking what I see in Ohio. Yes, they're not going to flip Ohio, but he looks at expanding that they did better in the Columbus suburbs, and they're thinking, and I could tell you this, that's Kent County, that's Grand Rapids.
Can I give you a homework assignment for your next time we visit? Well, let's look at Nebraska and look at that congressional district, because it's getting to be interesting to see what happens there. But let's
every electoral vote is going to count.
Every electoral vote
is what we're telling you.
That's what I'm kind of getting at there. Let's go to Kate Snow in Ohio, and Kate, as we're seeing from the map there, it's trending in the president's direction.
So I'm not in Ohio, just to be clear. I'm in 30
you're Pennsylvania.
Rock.
Oh,
no, I'm in 30 Rock.
Oh, well, come on over. We've got snacks. Yeah, sorry.
But I was in Ohio really recently. What I want to pick up on, Savannah, is what Chuck was just showing. He was just showing the county map and the close counties in Ohio that he was looking at. One of those up in the corner is Trumbull County. Trumbull County is a county in Ohio where Lordstown is. And back in 2016, it went to Trump by 51%. Before that, it had been an Obama county, okay? So it was 60% for Obama, then it swung completely and flipped to 51% for Trump. And look where it is right now, 10-point lead at the moment for President Trump. So it has stuck with Trump. I just talked to the mayor of Lordstown a few minutes ago, who said they're having a really good night out there. So that's evidence of what Chuck was just talking about, that some of these red counties in Ohio may actually be overperforming. He also mentioned Ashtabula County. Chuck pointed that out a minute ago. It is up even higher than it was in 2016. If you remember, on Nightly News recently, I did a story with some farmers where we stood in a big barn and they were all talking about Donald Trump and how much they support the president. That's Ashtabula County. To go back to Lordstown for a minute, the big issue there has been jobs. You'll remember maybe the GM plant in Lordstown shut down in 2019. there was concern that some Trump supporters would blame the president for that shutdown, and some do. I talked to a woman who works with GM now, trying to help people transition. A lot of families have been separated where, dad has to move to another plant with GM now and commute back, and it's split up families. So one woman I talked to said she's absolutely moving away from the president. She had supported him back in 2016. But then a whole lot of other people, including the mayor that I just mentioned in Lordstown, they feel like jobs are being produced because Lordstown Motors has moved in, which is building electric pickup trucks. There's a battery plant, and there's now a home goods distribution center going up. So more jobs are coming. So a lot of people crediting the president with bringing jobs.
Okay. All right, Kate, thank you. We've got from 30 Rock, I might add. We have a lot more to come. Stay with us. Decision 2020 election night coverage rolls on after this break. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Hello, everyone. We are just back on the air here. We want to show you some Senate numbers right now. And this is starting off the state of Louisiana.
All right, that's Senator Cassidy headed back, and we've got an upset. This was the most vulnerable senator probably in the United States Senate. The Democrat from Alabama, Doug Jones, has lost. Tommy Tuberville, the Auburn coach, takes that race. So that's a gain for the Republicans in the Senate.
Dick Durbin will have another term in Illinois. We project he will win. In Arizona, too early. Mark Kelly, though, leading Martha McSally right now, and this is a race that could be affecting what we're seeing on the presidential side in Arizona.
Let's go to Arkansas. Tom Cotton, the incumbent, headed back. He wins that one. West Virginia, same thing. The incumbent returns. Shelley Moore Capito easily defeating her opponent there.
All right, and to Georgia, Purdue, too early to call in that race, but this has been a race that certainly has drawn a lot of national attention, as has this one. Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison, a lot of money spent in that race, but right now too early to call, but Graham leads.
Same story up in Maine. It's a two-way race right now, essentially, between Senator Collins, the incumbent, and Sarah Gideon, although there are other candidates and they have ranked choice voting, so I'll just cut to the chase. It could be a while in Maine. It's not going to be tonight.
That's what you could say. Not tonight.
Okay, so go Betty Bye if you're waiting for Maine. Mississippi Senate is too early to call there. Mike Espy, the congressman, trying to take on the incumbent Cindy Hyde-Smith.
Marshall leading in Kansas right now. That race is too early to call. In Michigan, also too early to call.
That's one that folks had their eyes on, potential Republican pickup. We'll see if that holds. Here's Minnesota. A lot of talk about Minnesota tonight. It is too early to call. Let's go to the Iowa Senate race. Another one where Joni Ernst, the incumbent, looking to hang on against a challenger, Teresa Greenfield. Too early to call there. We'll watch that one.
And here's how the Senate breaks down right now. Dems 41, 40 seats for the Republicans.
All right, this was the one I just assigned to Chuck Todd. Nebraska, projected winner of 3 of 5 electoral votes. Do I have that right? That's what it
right
says.
Now, right.
Yes.
Well,
awaiting the congressional district.
Well, there's 2, right? So that sounds like we're not ready to call the first either, which would be Lincoln, but that's going to probably be Republican. But Omaha is the second congressional district. Polls have indicated that Joe Biden had a pretty a lead there that looked like his leads in Wisconsin or Michigan in that 5 to 8 point range, but you had the actual congressional race itself. The former Democratic congressman endorsed the incumbent Republican congressman over the Democratic nominee. So there's a lot of potential split ticketing. I don't think anything is a slam dunk there for the Democrats nabbing 1 electoral vote. And hey, we know every electoral vote counts. And if you've ever seen those 269 scenarios, this is why Nebraska 2 and Maine 2, and by the way, we have a long way to go in Maine getting their vote. Some of this vote is same-day vote. We don't have some of the mail-in vote.
I see you turned in extra credit. Andrea, what are you watching in these Senate races we just talked about?
Well, I'm looking at Georgia, where you've got 2 Senate races, and now you've got Reverend Raphael Warnock, who just had an explosion of support. And he's in the runoff now against Kelly Loeffler, who is the incumbent, the appointed incumbent. That really is a much better looking race for him in the runoff that'll be January 6th because Doug Collins, the strong Trump supporting House member you remember House Judiciary, was so strong during the impeachment hearings, a really, really strong Republican. He's had a controversial record, very outspoken against Ruth Bader Ginsburg, talking about QAnon. So he is not in that runoff. And Reverend Warnock, who comes from the Reverend Martin Luther King's church, has just had a really big rise to get into that runoff. The second race is Ossoff.
Yeah. Well, can I just say the importance of Warnock in this runoff? So there have been 2 Senate runoffs this century. Or two Senate runoffs since Andrea and I have been covering Senate in Georgia, okay? Each time the Democratic nominee was a white nominee. They've not had a compelling African-American nominee in one of these runoffs in Georgia. And before, it had just, the Democrats ended up just sort of fading at the end. Warnock, and he's not just, this is the pastor at MLK's church. It is one of those things that both Senate seats, if they end up in runoffs, that is a huge value add for the Democrats. And I know I've talked to some Senate Republicans who worry about that nightmare scenario of Warnock helping to drive up.
This is where Stacey Abrams, the work she has done over a number of years, is really, at least in this Senate race, paid off. We have to see what happens with
let's see what the whole Georgia ball of wax looks like before we just give out credit yet.
David Perdue is the incumbent against Ossoff, John Ossoff, and that remains to be seen.
We'll take a short break and be back with more. We've got poll closings at the top of the hour in 4 states with a total of 78 electoral votes, including Big Blue California. Stay with us.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Got a couple presidential calls to make right now. First in Mississippi, NBC News projects that Donald Trump will win in the state of Mississippi.
In Wyoming, President Trump takes it, which brings us to the map of 270, the road to 270. It's starting to fill out. We're just a few minutes away for some poll closings in the West and a big call in South Carolina to make.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham is going to hang on. Of course, he got hammered by a lot of spending from outside. Jamie Harrison and the criticism over Senator Graham's positioning on the nomination of a Supreme Court justice during an election year, but he will hang on, the projected winner in South Carolina. Now to that 3-way race we were talking about in Georgia. This will advance to a runoff on January 5th.
Let's go to Casey Hunt, who covers Capitol Hill. Casey's Lindsey Graham, he fought hard for it, but he holds on.
He really did fight hard, Savannah, and his challenger, Jamie Harrison, raised more money than any candidate ever in a race that was not for president of the United States. Just a huge amount of money. And so that's what Lindsey Graham was up against in what was a difficult, he felt, needle to thread between President Trump on the one hand and his concerns about suburban women on the other. But he is going to hang on here. And this story is part of a narrative that's shaping up to be much better for Republicans who are trying to hold on to the Senate than they frankly thought it was going to be when we all sat down here at 7 o'clock tonight to talk about how this was going to play out. That Georgia runoff that you guys were all just talking about is actually part of that story. Don't forget, Republicans in Washington really wanted Kelly Loeffler to hang on to that seat. Doug Collins was somebody that's farther to the right. They thought that Raphael Warnock might have a better chance to beat Doug Collins. They've gotten the race that they wanted in that Georgia runoff, and they're still holding out hope that David Perdue could win with 50%. So we are looking like the Senate is all still very much on the line. Again, better looking for Republicans than they thought. Maine is another one to keep an eye on. Senator Susan Collins seems to be significantly outperforming President Trump in Maine, which is what they needed. Still, obviously, a very long time to count in that race. But overall, across the map, this is not the wipeout that some Republicans feared at this hour.
All right, Casey, we'll keep our eye on it. Republicans picked one up in Alabama, but lost one in Colorado. So we'll continue to do the math, crunch the numbers, and keep you posted on that.
All right, for those of you in the Eastern and Central time zones, your local news is next. For everyone else, a brief pause as Decision 2020 election night coverage continues here on NBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
Everybody, our election night coverage rolls on. It is 11 o'clock in the east, 8 o'clock in the west, and we have a bunch of results to report to you, including some poll closings. California just closed. Joe Biden, the projected winner there. Out west, Oregon, Joe Biden expected to win handily there. Oregon, 7 electoral votes.
Biden will sweep the Pacific Coast as we're projecting that he will win in Washington, the state of Washington as well. Idaho, too early. Trump leads there, however.
We started the night talking about Florida. We'll start talking about Florida. It is too close to call at this hour, but the president is leading there. Republicans feeling good about that. In Texas, a similar story. It is too early to call, but the president has taken a lead in Texas.
We've been carefully watching North Carolina. That is still too close to call, but you see the numbers on the screen there. Also in Ohio, too early to call.
Let's go to Georgia. Democrats had high hopes here. It's too early to call. We'll see how that one shakes out. We've seen a couple of the Senate races advance to a runoff in January. In Virginia, it's too early to call, but Vice President Biden is leading in that race.
Let's take a look at a pair of the states in that blue wall the Democrats are hoping for. Wisconsin, too early. Pennsylvania, too early as well.
And in Minnesota, where there's been a lot of talk tonight about whether or not this one will flip, right now, too early to call. But you see with the votes in Vice President Biden with a lead there, and in Maine, where they have a ranked choice voting, so it could be a while. It's too early to call.
Not a whole lot of vote left in Arizona. We're watching that. It is still too early to call. However, Biden is leading in Arizona. Iowa, too early right now.
And let's go out west to Nevada. Too early to call. We'll keep an eye on that one. Vice President Biden had been leading in polls in Nevada prior to this day. Let's look at the map to 270 starting to fill out in ways that we expected. Chuck, we haven't had a shocker yet.
No, we haven't. We think one might be coming, but I just want to update folks on the blue wall on the northern states here, just to show you. Wisconsin looks really tight, 43% in. None of the early vote. Yeah, right. And these are states that we don't expect to see much of the early vote tonight, but I just wanted to show you that. Pennsylvania, another one, just to show you again. It's almost, there's a little bit of early vote. We know some counties are going to do it, but it's almost all the yellow is to today's vote. So that's something I think is worth letting you know about here. But let's take a look at Arizona. I want to take a look at the states that we're all waiting on here. Didn't mean to be in that county. Here we have maintaining there a 200,000 vote lead, waiting for 25% of the state. But this is all early. And, you know, I've had people go, how come you guys aren't calling it? Or that seems to be a big lead. And it's like, we want to see some of today's vote. Right, this is all in the mail. We want to see some of today's vote, and I think that's going to be something there. Let me take you to Georgia here, because we're starting to finally get some real numbers in, 62%. We still have a lot of vote in and around Atlanta. All right, just Gwinnett County, only 17% reporting. And let's take you to DeKalb, 24% reporting. Fulton, only 43%. Cobb, 54%. So as you see, some of the outer suburbs are reporting in here. So I think we all want to wait to see what does this race look like when at least half the Atlanta vote and the Atlanta suburban vote is in. That's not yet in. And just to give you a quick update on North Carolina, as you can see, in some of these places, we're still waiting for the same vote. I was at 84% in Greensboro, Guilford County, the last time we checked in on this. But the president's lead has expanded as more of the rural counties come in. I have to say, Jason Miller said that they were going to win the state by 75,000. He thought right now they have a 73,000 vote lead. But again, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I think Biden might cut this, but not quite make it. But again, really not good news the way this is going on the Senate side of things. For the Democrats, really good news, looks like, for Tom Tillis.
All right, who was considered one of the more endangered incumbent senators.
Second or third most endangered.
Yeah, okay.
Let's get the read on the ground from Philadelphia. That's where Rahima Ellis is. Rahima, good evening.
Good evening, Lester. Take a look behind me. You can see red lights, flashing lights from police just outside of City Hall. And they're here because of what is going on here at the Pennsylvania Convention Center. This is ground zero for the counting of 400,000 ballots that have been mailed in. 350,000 mail-in ballots are going to be counted right on the second floor of this convention center. And one of the things that's so important here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania is they did not start counting mail-in ballots like some other states until this morning. And they're saying it's going to take them not hours but days to do it. So far, they said they've got an army of people doing this, counting about 10,000 an hour. 75,000 have been counted so far. They say they're going 16-1 Democrats, but that doesn't tell us how they voted. It just tells us who voted. Why is this so important? This state had been solidly Democrat. Obama won it twice, and then by a surprise, Trump won it by less than 1%, or some 44,000 votes. So that's why people here are saying every single one of those mail-in ballots is important. The other thing that's important is they're going to be counting them not just for hours, but for days, because they've been given a 3-day extension. And so they have up until Friday. Ballots that have been postmarked by today, the United States Postal Service will be delivering those ballots right here for them to be counted up until Friday. And the governor of Pennsylvania has said to everyone, be calm, be patient, and be confident. Every single one of your votes will be counted. It's just going to take some time. Lester?
All right, Rahima, thanks.
Gotti Schwartz is in Phoenix, Arizona, the aforementioned Maricopa County, where the action is tonight. Gotti, what are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Yeah, Savannah, just a little while ago, we saw a pretty remarkable scene, some ground game, strong ground game during the middle of a pandemic. Right now, we are at a grassroots kind of watch party. You can see this Zoom screen behind me, but just a little while ago, we saw hundreds of cars of these organizers and these Latino-based community groups coming together, dropping off their canvassing gear, then going home and joining this virtual dance party to watch some of those returns come in. They have been working here on the ground in Arizona for over a decade now. In fact, that Maricela, she was just telling me, the one in the black right here, she started at the age of 12 years old, marching against Joe Arpaio, and she has been working just along with a lot of the other people here to try to vote Donald Trump out of office. They are optimistic because they say that since 2016, the state of Arizona has changed quite a bit. For one, we now have 700,000 more registered voters than we did in 2016. And when you talk to them, they'll tell you very quickly that they registered 100,000 of those 700,000 new voters. So that's something that they're looking at. But right now, we're looking at about 75% of the vote in. We know that that's about 2.4 million people that have cast their ballots that they've already got up. We know 2.6 million people voted early, so the rest of those early vote numbers should be coming in a little bit later tonight. We also know that around Maricopa County, things went off relatively seamlessly today, so those numbers also should be coming in tonight, but at this point, still no clear word on when we could get full results. Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you.
And we noted a minute ago that California has now fallen into the Biden column. Jolene Kent is in Anaheim for us. Jolene, good evening to you.
Hey, Lester, good evening. We're seeing the final few voters cast their ballots here in Anaheim.
at the school district location. Now, what we know from 2016 and earlier even this evening is it was pretty busy, but none of the same long lines that many were expecting. And the reason is because over 1 million ballots were cast by mail, according to the Orange County Registrar. So they were able to get those ballots out in October, get them processed. And the reason they were able to process them so quickly and starting to drop those results right now is because of the massive investment the Orange County Registrar has made with taxpayer dollars, millions of dollars invested in new technology to make this possible. Now, Orange County, of course, a long time favoring of moderate Republicans, going for McCain and Romney, then going for Hillary Clinton back in 2016. But what we continue to see is a very smooth operation throughout Orange County. I talked to the Orange County Registrar today, spent the day with him, and he said in terms of fraud and issues with ballots, concerns about ballots, it's only about 1% so far. And they have this system where they bring in the ballots, they open them with a high-speed machine, and then they match those signatures as part of that process. And so all of that signature matching that so many people have been concerned about across the country is actually done by specially trained workers here in Orange County. So far, very smooth across the board. Lines relatively manageable because of that huge surge in mail-in voting, guys.
Jolene Kent, thanks very much. With us once again, our NBC News political contributors Claire McCaskill, former Democratic senator from Missouri, and conservative columnist and editor of National Review, Rich Lauer. Thanks to both of you. Senator, first off, Donald Trump has just been declared the winner of your home state. And he seems to be doing well in Ohio. Does it give you great concern about the blue wall and Joe Biden's strength as this race seems to be pushing now toward the Midwest?
No, because you have to remember that Donald Trump won Missouri by almost 20 points 4 years ago. And he won Ohio by, I think, close to 10, 8 or 9. So in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, it was all like less than 1 point. So they were close to being in the other column in the last election. That's why the strategy has been from the beginning to take the 3 states back that Trump won in a very close election with a candidate, frankly, fair or unfair, had very high unfavorables, unlike Joe Biden, who still ended up at the end of a presidential campaign with more people saying they like him than not.
Let's go to you, Rich Lowry. The president had us a path to 270. It requires an inside straight of those Sun Belt states. So far, so good in terms of the results we've seen. However, Arizona might be giving the Trump campaign a few heart palpitations at the moment. How do you see it?
Yeah, so the question of this night, Savannah, always was, could Trump get to Pennsylvania? Could he get to the point where Pennsylvania would matter and potentially be decisive? And it looks like he's going to make it there. Even if Arizona falls off the map, he can still win Pennsylvania and get to a 269 tie, which he'd probably win in the House for complicated reasons we don't need to get into right now. We don't want everyone really breaking into the liquor cabinets, bringing up this possibility. But he's getting to where Pennsylvania's going to matter. That seems clear tonight. And also the odds of Republicans holding the Senate, as Chuck alluded to earlier with Tom Tillis, the Republican incumbent, looking better in Pennsylvania, the odds have increased over the course of the night. And even if Joe Biden wins, if there's a Republican Senate, that would mean his legislative agenda would basically be dead on arrival from the beginning. So far tonight, Republicans are feeling pretty good.
Andrea?
Just a caution flag on Pennsylvania because of that 3-day vote. That was a Supreme Court decision, giving them 3 days to count the early votes, which, as you point out, could not be counted until the polls closed today. They've got 3 days to count that early vote. That's a lot of votes that are out there in Pennsylvania. If this is close, that's going to matter. The president has been complaining about it every single day. At every stop, he's talked about this, how it's unfair, that he's going to have his lawyers out. The lawyers have seen more Republican challenges in Pennsylvania in the last couple of weeks than in any other state. They've lost the big one in the Supreme Court on the 3-day vote, but they could do another end run around it. The Biden team is ready for that. They have some of the best lawyers in the country, all ready for exactly what they expect to happen.
I think that's why Trump called that the nightmare scenario. It all comes down to Pennsylvania because they'll be sending in the lawyers, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants the lawyers. All right, Rich and Claire, we'll get back with you guys in a few.
Spoken like a lawyer.
NBC News election meant that in a really nice way. Election night coverage will continue in just a moment.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus. You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
The band is taking a break, obviously, but we're back.
But Chuck isn't. He never takes a break. In fact, here he is. Oh, you're talking. Well, but you're on.
We're on the air.
Oh, we're on the air. Well, I missed that one. My apologies.
That's because the band took a break. You didn't hear your music.
Yeah, no, and I could. The only good news is I was talking to our boss.
Yeah.
So that if I'm going to get in trouble. Actually, I was going to go into Iowa here. We got a decent chunk of vote. Iowa's one that again, it isn't quote necessary on the Biden path to 270. It is much more important to Trump on 270. But this was a swing state until Hillary Clinton lost it by 9 points, and we thought, oh, is Iowa going to go with Ohio? Now it is bouncing back a bit. I think at the end of the day, Biden probably comes up short. I do want to show you here. We're looking at slightly more of the early vote has come in than today's vote, which probably why Biden has a narrow lead. But you do see where he has definitely improved upon Hillary Clinton. We've got almost all of Dallas County and the suburban county of Des Moines. Here, Trump's narrowly ahead, but you can see here, look at that, 5% of the Gary Johnson vote is basically all gone to Biden. So Biden really narrowed it, picked up all that Gary Johnson vote here. But Hillary Clinton lost by 9. And so I've noticed in a lot of areas you see that Joe Biden is improving on Hillary Clinton margins, but I'm seeing him at about 4 or 5 points. Dubuque County was one that we were really interested in because this is a county that Trump flipped very narrowly, and he arguably flipped it because Gary Johnson got 4%. And as you can see here, Joe Biden doing well. Dubuque County is a traditional Democratic county. A lot of union workers over here. This is where Donald Trump, though, overperformed.
Is this early vote or day of vote you're looking at?
This is a 50-50 right now. We're seeing in Iowa. They've mixed it up a little bit. It's slightly more early vote than same-day vote. So, look, Iowa's facing up to be fairly competitive, and keep an eye on this because the Senate race and this presidential race will be in sync. The two candidates will be off by a point at best.
Okay, all right.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware at Biden headquarters in Wilmington tonight. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. So walk me through it. So maybe you pick up Arizona, you lose Florida, maybe you lose Georgia, maybe you lose North Carolina. What's the likely or most the shortest path to 270 for Biden?
Well, Lester, as you just pointed out, there's several paths for Joe Biden to be elected our next president. But we have to remember, over 100 million Americans voted early, whether in person or by mail. And as Chuck was just pointing out, there are different rules in different states for whether they have already counted and are already reporting that early vote, or whether they're just beginning counting it and won't report it for several days. I'm hearing encouraging things about Ohio, about Arizona, about Iowa. So I think there still remain several paths for Joe Biden tonight, while President Trump has a very narrow path. And frankly, I'd rather be in our camp than his tonight. We have to remember that every vote needs to be counted before we conclude this election. Vote counts happen at the state and county level, and we have a number of states and counties that have already indicated they won't be done counting votes for several days.
Senator Coons, with the exception possibly of Arizona, it looks more and more like Joe Biden is going to have to rely on that blue wall, turning Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania back into the Democratic corner. How do you feel about what you've heard from your sources on the ground about how the industrial Midwest is playing out for Joe Biden?
Well, I've been texting and calling with my Senate colleagues as well as local elected officials and organizers in several states today, the ones you just referenced, and I'm optimistic. I think we're ultimately going to have a great outcome for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They've had the right message from the beginning of this campaign about bringing people together, getting us out of this pandemic, and building back stronger our economy. But we just have to be patient and make sure that every vote gets counted in what ultimately may be one of several paths towards a victory by Joe Biden tonight or tomorrow.
The Trump campaign threw out Minnesota as a possible pickup for them. Do you see that in the cards? Is it something you're worried about?
I really don't. What I'm hearing from Minnesota elected officials I've touched base with is that although Minnesota is a state where you can show up and vote at the last moment, they don't see anything that's happened on the ground today that suggests to them that Donald Trump may unexpectedly take Minnesota.
Senator, we have to say congratulations to you. You won your race. Turns out you also had a campaign to run. But what about what's going on in the Senate? I know Democrats had high hopes of taking back this Senate, but some of the races are not turning out as expected. In particular, North Carolina, Tom Tillis, the Republican incumbent, appearing to do better than many expected.
Well, so far I've been encouraged by the outcomes in Colorado and likely in Arizona. I'm sorry for my colleague Doug Jones, who you've called to not be reelected, but he's done a great job in the Senate. And I think there's other news tonight that is encouraging in Georgia and in other states. But in several states that we expect to pick up Senate seats in, it is still too close to call.
All right.
Senator Coons, good to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
We will take another quick break here. We'll continue with our coverage right after this.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Well, where is the drama of the night? You are looking at it right there. All those states in yellow, those battleground states, are too early to call. And any combination of them could turn this into a very interesting night.
Too early, too close. It's not even over, not even close. So we'll continue covering this. We're back.
You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus. You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.